I am Raymond Bishop, 72 years old, and for 40 years I thought the foundation of a home was made of concrete and rebar. I was wrong. The foundation of a home is trust, and when that cracks, the whole building comes down on top of you. My son-in-law forced me to sell the house I built with my own two hands. He called the sheriff to evict me like a common criminal from the property where I raised my family. As I stood on the sidewalk, humiliated and broken, my daughter Nia ran out the front door. I expected a hug, I expected tears. Instead, she screamed, "We do not want your junk here anymore," and threw a heavy, dirty black trash bag right at my chest. Gavin, my son-in-law, laughed from the porch as the neighbors watched in horror. I dragged that bag to a cheap motel, intending to end my life that very night. But when the bag tore open, I did not find my old clothes. I found $900,000 in cash and a secret note that changed the game forever. Before I tell you how a trash bag saved my life and destroyed my enemies, let me know which city you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that what goes around eventually comes around. The nightmare began on a Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock sharp. I was sitting on my front porch drinking black coffee just like I had done every morning since 1982. The Georgia sun was just starting to heat up the oak floorboards beneath my feet. I knew every grain of wood on that porch because I laid them myself. I was a carpenter by trade and a general contractor by necessity. This house was not just a structure to me, it was my biography. Every room held a memory of my late wife, Clara. Every scratch on the wall marked how tall Nia was growing each year. Then a police cruiser pulled into the driveway. I did not stand up. I recognized the car. It belonged to Sheriff Miller. I had fixed his roof 5 years ago after a hurricane. Miller was a good man, or so I thought. He walked up the path slowly, his hat in his hand. He did not look me in the eye. That was the first sign that the world was about to shift under my feet. Mr. Bishop, Miller said, his voice low and apologetic. "I am sorry to disturb you this early, Ray." I took a sip of my coffee. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" Miller sighed. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. It was thick legal paper with a stamp on it that looked like a seal of doom. "I have a court order, Ray," he said. "It is an eviction notice. You have to vacate the premises immediately." I frowned. I put my mug down on the railing. Eviction. That is impossible. I own this house, Sheriff. I paid off the mortgage in 1995. "I have the deed in my safe." Miller shook his head. "Not anymore, Ray. The deed was transferred 6 months ago. The property belongs to Sterling Real Estate Ventures now." Sterling. My blood ran cold. That was Gavin last name. Gavin Sterling, my son-in-law. I stood up, my knees popping with the effort. I looked past the sheriff. A sleek black Range Rover pulled up behind the police car. The door opened and Gavin stepped out. He was wearing a white linen suit that cost more than my first truck. He had sunglasses on, and he was sucking on one of those electronic vape pens. He blew a cloud of strawberry-scented smoke into the morning air. It smelled sweet and sickening. Gavin walked up the driveway with the swagger of a man who thinks he owns the world. He stopped next to the sheriff and smirked at me. "Good morning, Ray," Gavin said. "I see you got the news." I gripped the railing. My knuckles turned the color of ash. "What did you do, Gavin?" I asked, my voice shaking with a rage I had not felt since the riots in the 60s. "How did you get my name on those papers?" Gavin laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "Come on, Ray, do not play senile. You signed them, remember, when your eyes were bad last winter. You thought you were signing insurance updates. I told you I would handle the paperwork for you." He took another puff of his vape. "You really should read the fine print, old man," I remembered. My cataracts were bad then. I trusted him. He was family. He was the man my daughter loved. I signed where he pointed because I thought that is what fathers do. They trust their children. "This is fraud," I shouted. "I will call a lawyer." "You can call the president if you want," Gavin said, checking his gold watch. "But right now this is my property, and I want you off of it. I have investors coming at noon to look at the lot." The lot. He did not call it a home. He called it a lot. "He wants to tear it down," Sheriff Miller whispered to me. "He says the land is worth $5 million if he puts up luxury condos." My heart hammered against my ribs. Tear it down. He was going to bulldoze Clara Rose Garden. He was going to smash the nursery I built for Nia. I looked at the house. I looked at the solid oak pillar that held up the porch roof. I remembered the day I found that tree. I remembered hand-planing it until it was smooth as silk. I walked over to the pillar. I wrapped my arms around it. I pressed my cheek against the wood. I am not going anywhere, I said. This is my house. I built it. I lived in it, and I will die in it. Gavin rolled his eyes. Sheriff, get him out of here. This is embarrassing. Miller looked at me with pity. Ray, please, do not make me do this. The paperwork is legal. If you resist, I have to arrest you for trespassing. Trespassing. On my own porch. Just then the front door opened. Naya stepped out. My heart leaped. Here was my salvation. My daughter. My Nia. She would stop this. She knew the truth. She knew I would never sell. Naya, I called out. Nia, tell them. Tell them Gavin is lying. Naya stood there on the threshold. She was wearing a silk robe and she looked tired. Her face was pale. She looked at Gavin, then she looked at me. For a second I saw fear in her eyes, a deep, terrified panic, but then her face hardened. It became a mask of stone. She did not run to me, she did not yell at her husband. She reached behind the door and pulled out a large, heavy black trash bag. She walked to the edge of the porch. She stood right above me. Dad, she said. Her voice was cold, colder than I had ever heard it. You need to leave. I stared at her. Nia, what are you saying? We do not want you here, she screamed. You are holding us back. You are just a hoarder living in the past. We want to move on. We want money. We want a life without your junk cluttering up our space. She lifted the bag. It looked heavy. It bulged with sharp angles. Take your trash, she yelled. And she threw it. She hurled the bag right at me. It hit me in the chest with a heavy thud, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled back, almost falling down the stairs. The bag hit the ground with a metallic clank. I looked up at her, gasping for air. Nia, I whispered. Why? She did not answer. She turned around and slammed the door shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Gavin laughed. He clapped his hands. Now that is what I call taking out the garbage, he said. He looked at the sheriff. Escort him off the property, Miller. And if he comes back within 500 feet, arrest him. I felt numb. The pain in my chest from the bag was nothing compared to the hole in my soul. My daughter had just thrown me away. She had chosen the greedy snake over the father who had worked double shifts to pay for her college. I grabbed the neck of the trash bag. It was heavy. It dragged on the gravel as I walked down the driveway. I did not look back. I could not. If I looked back, I would have fallen apart right there in front of Gavin, and I would not give him that satisfaction. I walked for 3 miles. I dragged my life behind me in a plastic sack. I checked into the Starlight Motel on the edge of town. It was the kind of place where the neon sign buzzed like a dying fly and the carpet smelled of stale beer and regret. I paid for one night with the crumpled bills in my pocket. I went into room number 9. I locked the door. I pulled the curtain shut, blocking out the daylight. I sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. I was 72 years old. I was homeless. I was betrayed. I had lost my wife years ago, and now I had lost my daughter and my home. I looked at the ceiling fan spinning slowly. It wobbled on its axis. I thought about the rope I kept in the trunk of my car for securing lumber. I thought about how easy it would be to just end it. Why go on? What was there to fight for? The world belonged to men like Gavin now. Men who stole and lied and smiled while they did it. I stood up. I felt a tear run down my cheek, hot and salty. I kicked the trash bag in frustration. Take your trash, Nia had said. I kicked it again, harder this time. The plastic snagged on the metal frame of the bed. It ripped open. I expected to see my old work clothes. I expected to see my photo albums thrown in carelessly. I expected to see the junk she claimed I was hoarding. But as the black plastic peeled away, something green spilled out onto the dirty motel carpet. I froze. I knelt down. My hands were shaking. It was money. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands. I pulled the bag open wider. There were dozens of bundles. It looked like hundreds of thousands of dollars. My breath caught in my throat. This was not my junk. This was a fortune. I reached in deeper. My fingers brushed against something hard. It was a leather-bound ledger book. And stuck to the cover of the book was a note scrawled in red lipstick on a piece of napkin. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Nia handwriting. I picked up the note. I read the first line and my heart stopped beating for a second. Dad, the note read. Do not scream. Do not call the police. The house is bugged. He is watching everything. I looked at the money, I looked at the note. I sat back on the floor surrounded by nearly $1 million in cash in a room that cost $40 a night. The rope in the trunk was forgotten. The despair vanished, replaced by a sudden jolt of adrenaline. My daughter had not thrown me away. She had just handed me a weapon, and I was going to use it to go to war. I sat there on the stained carpet of the Starlight Motel with my legs crossed like a child playing a game. But this was no game. Surrounding me were towers of cash, bundles of $100 bills held together by rubber bands that looked like they had been taken from a broccoli stalk. The smell of the money filled the small room. It was a distinct smell. It smelled of old ink and sweat and greed. $900,000. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought I might need one of my nitroglycerin pills. But I did not reach for my medicine. I reached for the napkin. The napkin was crumpled and stained with grease from a pizza slice, but the writing on it was bright red. It was written in lipstick. My daughter Nia did not wear bright red lipstick. She preferred pale pinks. The fact that she had used this color meant she had grabbed the first thing she could find in her purse. It meant she was terrified. I smoothed the napkin out on my knee. My hands were shaking so bad I had to hold my wrist with my other hand just to read it. The handwriting was jagged and rushed. "Dad," the note read, "do not scream. Do not call the police. The house is bugged. He has cameras in every room, even the bathroom. He watches everything I do." I stopped reading. A cold chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the motel air conditioning. Cameras. In the bathroom. My son-in-law was not just a thief. He was a monster. He was keeping my daughter in a digital prison. I forced myself to read on. He forced me to sign those transfer papers, Dad. He held a gun to my head 2 years ago and made me practice your signature until I got it perfect. Then he made me sign loan documents. He has me on video doing it. He says if I leave him, he will send the videos to the FBI. He says I will go to prison for fraud and forgery. He says I will never see the sun again. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The air left my lungs in a ragged sob. It was not betrayal. All morning I had been cursing her name. I had been planning to write her out of my will. I had looked at her with hatred when she threw that bag at me, but she was not throwing me away. She was saving me. She was smuggling the war chest out of the enemy castle right under the nose of the dragon. I looked at the last line of the note. This money is his stash. He was going to use it to pay off the zoning commissioner tomorrow. Take it. Hide it. Use it to bury him, Dad. Please. You are the only one who can fix this. I love you. I folded the napkin carefully and put it in my shirt pocket right next to my heart. My daughter was a hostage, and I was the extraction team. I looked at the money again. Nearly $1 million. If I called the police, they would arrest Gavin, yes. But Gavin would release those videos. He would drag Nia down with him. She would go to federal prison for bank fraud. She would be an accomplice. The law does not care about why you signed a fake check, only that you signed it. I could not call the cops. I stood up and paced the small room. 3 steps to the window. 3 steps to the door. I needed help, but not the kind of help you find in the yellow pages. I needed someone who knew how to handle dirty money. Someone who knew how to walk through the mud without getting his shoes wet. I needed Booker. Booker Washington was a man I had known since 1970. We grew up on the same block. While I went into construction, Booker went into accounting. But he did not work for tax firms. He worked for the outfits in Chicago that ran numbers. He was the man who made sure the books balanced for people who solved problems with baseball bats. He had retired 10 years ago, moved back to Atlanta, and spent his days playing chess in the park. But you never really retire from that life. You just stop charging for your services. I picked up the motel phone. I dialed the number from memory. It rang 4 times. "Hello?" A deep, gravelly voice answered. "Booker," I said. "It is Ray." There was a pause. "Ray Bishop. I heard you got evicted this morning. Word travels fast in the barber shop." "It travels fast," I said. "Listen, Booker, I need you to come to the Starlight Motel, room 9. "You need a place to stay?" Ray Booker asked, his voice softening. "I have a guest room. You do not need to stay in that dump." "I do not need a room, Booker," I said. "I need your eyes, and bring your toolkit, the one you used to use in the 80s. The line went silent for a long time. "Are we in trouble?" Ray Booker asked. "We are in deep, Booker. Give me 20 minutes. I hung up. I sat back down on the floor and started organizing the cash. I made neat stacks. $10,000 a stack. It was calming. It was like laying bricks, one by one building a wall. 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. It was a rhythmic knock. 2 taps, a pause, then 3 taps. I opened the door. Booker stood there wearing a fedora and a trench coat, looking like he had stepped out of a noir film. He was holding a leather briefcase. He stepped inside and I locked the door behind him. Booker turned around and saw the bed covered in money. He did not gasp. He did not whistle. He just took off his hat and placed it on the dresser. "Well," he said calmly, "that is a lot of drywall." "It is 900,000, I said. Booker walked over to the money. He did not touch it yet. He leaned down and sniffed it. "Smells like mildew and expensive cologne," he said. He looked at me. "Where did you get this, Ray?" "My son-in-law," I said. "Or rather, my daughter stole it from him." I told him the story. I told him about the eviction, the trash bag, the note, the cameras, the blackmail. Booker listened without blinking. His face was a mask of stone. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "So the boy is not just a shark," Booker said. "He is a spider. He traps people in his web." He opened his briefcase. Inside there were no papers. There was a magnifying glass, a small digital scale, and a heavy black flashlight that looked military grade. "Turn off the lights," Ray Booker said. I flipped the switch. The room plunged into darkness. The only light came from the sliver of street lamp peeking through the curtains. Booker clicked on the flashlight. It cast a purple beam, an ultraviolet light. He picked up a stack of bills and ran the light over them. He flipped through the stack, fanning the bills like a deck of cards. "Interesting," Booker murmured. "What is it?" I asked. Booker picked up another stack, then another. He turned the lights back on. He looked at me with a serious expression. "Ray, do you know where Gavin gets his money?" Booker asked. "Real estate," I said. "He buys and flips houses." Booker shook his head. "No, Ray, this is not real estate money. Real estate money is digital. It is wire transfers and checks. Nobody keeps $1 million in cash unless they are trying to hide it from the IRS or someone worse." He held up a bill. "See this stain on the edge?" he asked, pointing to a microscopic smudge I could barely see. "And see how the fibers react under the UV light. There is a residue here." "What kind of residue?" I asked. "Chemicals," Booker said. "This money has been in a place where they process methamphetamines. Or it has been handled by people who process it." My stomach turned over. "Drugs. Gavin was involved in drugs." "It gets worse," Booker said. He pointed to a small stamp on the rubber band holding the stack. It was a tiny blue eagle. "That is not a bank stamp, Ray. That is a chop mark. It is how cartels mark their shipments." I sank onto the bed. "My daughter is living in a house with cartel money," I whispered. Booker nodded. "If Gavin owes these people money and he loses it, he is a dead man. But if this is his profit, then he is a partner. Either way, Ray, this money is radioactive. If the cops find it, they seize it and put Naya in jail as an accessory. If the cartel finds it, they kill everyone. So what do?" I asked. "I cannot spend it. I cannot deposit it. It is useless." Booker smiled, a slow, dangerous smile that reminded me why nobody messed with him back in the day. "It is not useless, Ray. It is leverage." He picked up a stack of bills and slapped it into his palm. "This is dirty money," Booker said, "which means it exists off the books. Gavin cannot report it stolen. He cannot call the police and say my father-in-law stole my drug money." Booker started pacing the room. "He is going to be desperate, Ray. He needs this money for something big. You said the note mentioned a zoning commissioner." "Yes," I said. "He needs to pay a bribe tomorrow." Booker chuckled. "If he does not pay that bribe, his project fails. If his project fails, his investors will ask questions. And if he cannot pay back the people who gave him this cash..." Booker made a slicing motion across his throat. Ray looked at the money. "So we hold on to it?" I asked. "No," Booker said. "We do not just hold it. We clean it. And then we use it to buy the one thing Gavin values more than his life." "His reputation?" I asked. "No," Booker said. "His debt." Booker sat down next to me. "I know some people, Ray. People who operate shadow financing companies. We can take this cash, filter it through a few shell companies, and turn it into a legitimate line of credit." He looked me dead in the eye. "We are going to become Gavin Lender, Ray. We are going to lend him his own money back, but we are going to charge him interest. And we are going to take your house as collateral." I stared at Booker. The plan was insane. It was brilliant. "You want me to become a loan shark?" I asked. "I want you to become a bank," Booker corrected. A bank that owns his soul. He started packing the money into his briefcase. We need to move this, Ray. It is not safe here. We will take it to my safe house. I watched him pack the bills. My mind was racing. Gavin had kicked me out of my home. He had humiliated me. He had terrorized my daughter. He thought he was the king of the jungle because he had money. But he forgot one thing. Money does not belong to the person who holds it. It belongs to the person who knows how to count it. Booker clicked the briefcase shut. Ray, he said, standing up. Yes, Booker. Booker patted the leather case. This money is not clean. It is filthy. He grinned. But if you use it right, you can buy back your freedom. And you can buy back your daughter life. He walked to the door and opened it, peering out into the night. Come on, old man, Booker said. Let us go do some laundry. The black sedan had been tailing me for 3 blocks. It was a nondescript Ford, probably a rental, and the man behind the wheel thought he was invisible. He was wearing sunglasses on a cloudy day, which is the first sign of an amateur. I knew these streets. I had paved some of them myself back in the 80s. I knew that if you turned left on Elm Street and right on Oak, you could disappear into an alleyway that did not show up on GPS. But I did not turn. I did not run. I knew exactly who sent him. Gavin. My son-in-law was paranoid. He had stolen my house, but he knew that a man like me did not just walk away without a fight. He was waiting for me to go to a lawyer. He was waiting for me to go to the police. He wanted to catch me making a move so he could crush it. So I decided to give him the show he wanted to see. I pulled my old pickup truck into the parking lot of a Burger King. I walked inside and went straight to the bathroom. Booker was already there, standing in the handicap stall waiting. We did not speak. I slid the heavy gym bag full of money under the stall divider. Booker slid a plastic grocery bag back to me. Inside the grocery bag was a pair of torn trousers, a stained flannel shirt that smelled of urine, and a pair of shoes with the soles flapping loose. I took off my clean work clothes. I folded them neatly, because a man never loses his dignity even when he is playing a role. Then I put on the rags. I rubbed some dirt from the floor onto my face. I messed up my gray hair until I looked like a lunatic. I walked out the back door, leaving my truck behind. Booker would take care of it. I walked out onto the street, not as Ray Bishop, the master carpenter, but as Ray, the broken old derelict. The man in the black sedan was waiting across the street. I saw him snap a picture with a long lens camera. Good, I thought. Make sure you get my good side. I limped toward the park. I made sure to drag my left leg. I made sure my shoulders were slumped. I walked to a trash can near the park bench. People walked by me, giving me a wide berth. Mothers pulled their children closer. I saw the disgust in their eyes. Yesterday, I was a respected member of this community. Today, I was a piece of refuse. It hurt. I will not lie to you. It hurt my pride more than the cold wind biting through the thin flannel shirt. I reached into the trash can. I pulled out a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in foil. I unwrapped it and pretended to eat it. Click. Click. I heard the camera shutter from the car parked nearby. The private investigator was getting exactly what he needed. Evidence that Ray Bishop had hit rock bottom. Evidence that the threat was neutralized. I sat down on the bench. I looked across the street at the pavement. That stretch of sidewalk. Right there in front of the bakery. That was where I taught Nia how to ride a bike. I closed my eyes, and for a second, I was back in 1996. The sun was shining. Nia was 6 years old, wearing a pink helmet and terrified. "Do not let go, Daddy," she had screamed. "I won't." I had promised her, running alongside her, holding the back of the seat. "I got you, baby girl. I will never let you fall." I held on until she found her balance, and when I finally let go, she soared. She pedaled away, laughing, her streamers flying in the wind. She looked back at me, beaming with pride. "Look, Daddy," she yelled. "I am doing it." I sat on the park bench, shivering in my rags, and felt a single hot tear slide down my dirty cheek. I had kept my promise. I never let her fall. I paid for her braces. I paid for her tuition. I walked her down the aisle and handed her to Gavin, thinking he would protect her. And in return, she threw a trash bag at my chest. But then I remembered the note. I touched my chest pocket where the lipstick-stained napkin was hidden. She was still that little girl in the pink helmet. She was just terrified again. And this time, Gavin was the one pushing her toward a cliff. I wiped the tear away. The sadness hardened into something cold and sharp. It felt like steel. I stayed in the park until sunset. I dug through 3 more trash cans. I even yelled at a pigeon just to sell the act. When night fell, the black sedan drove away. The investigator had seen enough. He had his photos. He was going to report back to Gavin that Ray Bishop was finished. That Ray Bishop was crazy. I waited an hour to be sure. Then I stood up. I stopped limping. I walked with the steady, purposeful stride of a man going to work. I walked back to my neighborhood. I stuck to the shadows, avoiding the street lights. I reached the house. My house. It was lit up like a Christmas tree. There were cars parked all along the driveway. Expensive cars. Porsches, Mercedes, Teslas. Loud music was thumping from inside. I could hear the bass rattling the windows I had installed myself. Gavin was throwing a party. I crept through the neighbor hedges, moving silently through the azaleas until I had a clear view of the back patio. Gavin was standing on a table holding a bottle of champagne. He was surrounded by men in suits and women in cocktail dresses. Nia was there too, standing in the corner looking pale and ghost, like holding a glass she was not drinking. Gavin raised the bottle. To the future, he shouted, his voice slurred with alcohol. The crowd cheered. "Today I got the confirmation," Gavin yelled. "The old man is gone. My PI sent me photos. You should see him. He is eating out of dumpsters downtown. He is officially a bum." The guests laughed. It was a cruel, jagged sound. So tomorrow, Gavin continued kicking over a potted plant that Clara had nurtured for 10 years. "Tomorrow we bring in the bulldozers." Nia flinched. "We are going to knock this old piece of junk down," Gavin announced. "We are going to scrape this lot clean. And in its place, we are going to build the Sterling Heights. 12 luxury condos, glass and steel, no more rotting wood, no more old man smell." He popped the cork. Champagne sprayed over the crowd. "To $5 million, he screamed. The crowd roared. I stood in the darkness watching them celebrate on the grave of my memories. They were spilling wine on the deck I built. They were trampling the flowers my wife planted. They called my life work junk. They called my craftsmanship rotting wood. Gavin thought the house was just a structure. He thought it was just walls and a roof. He thought that if he knocked it down, he could erase me. I looked at the foundation of the house. I looked at the ventilation grates near the ground. Gavin did not know about the sub-basement. He did not know that when I built this house in 1980, I designed a drainage system that ran directly under the main load-bearing beams. He did not know that I had installed a master valve that controlled the water pressure for the entire block, a valve that was hidden behind a false brick in the cellar. And he certainly did not know that the structural integrity of the West Wing depended on a series of tension cables that could be loosened with a single wrench. He wanted to tear it down. Fine, but you do not tear down a Bishop house with bulldozers. I turned away from the party. The music faded behind me. I whispered into the night air, my voice low and dangerous. "You can steal the deed, Gavin. You can throw my furniture in the street. But you do not know what I buried underneath the concrete. And you definitely do not know that I still have the blueprints in my head." I walked away into the darkness. Let them have their party. Let them drink their champagne. Tomorrow the hangover was going to be catastrophic. The next morning I watched from the window of Booker's sedan parked down the street as the circus came to town. Gavin had brought in the big guns. A white Bentley pulled up to the curb, and out stepped a man in a navy suit who looked like he owned half of Atlanta. That was Marcus Thorne, the biggest developer in the state. If Gavin could sell the lot to Thorne, he would be set for life. I saw Gavin pointing at the house. He was waving his arms, making grand gestures. He was probably talking about the structural integrity. He was probably bragging about the solid foundation. He was selling my sweat and calling it his vision. I adjusted my binoculars. I saw them walking around the perimeter. Gavin slapped the brickwork. He looked confident. He looked like a man who had already spent the commission check. Little did he know that the house he was standing on was about to turn against him. I waited until midnight. The street was quiet. The party guests were long gone, and Gavin had left to sleep at a hotel because he did not like the silence of the empty house. I parked my truck 2 blocks away. I did not go to the front door. I did not go to the back door. I walked to the edge of the property line near the creek that ran behind the subdivision. In 1982, when I laid the foundation for this house, the soil report said the ground was heavy clay. It held water like a sponge. Most contractors would have just poured concrete and hoped for the best. But I was not most contractors. I installed a secondary drainage system deep underground, a series of iron pipes that channeled the groundwater away from the foundation. I covered the access point with a heavy stone slab near the creek bank. To anyone else, it looked like a landscaping rock. To me, it was the back door. I used a crowbar to shift the rock. It moved with a grinding sound that vanished into the noise of the crickets. I lowered myself into the access tunnel. It was tight, a 3-foot diameter pipe that smelled of wet earth and thyme. I crawled on my hands and knees. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the spider webs in the rusted iron. I crawled for 50 feet until I reached the main junction valve. This valve controlled the flow of the groundwater. For 40 years it had been open, allowing the water to drain harmlessly into the creek. I took a large pipe wrench from my belt. "I am sorry, old girl," I whispered to the house. "This is going to hurt a little bit." I gripped the rusty wheel of the valve. It groaned in protest. I put my shoulder into it using all the strength in my 72-year-old frame. With a screech of metal on metal, the valve began to turn. I closed it. Then I crawled another 10 feet to the secondary pressure relief system. This was a series of hydraulic jacks I had installed under the main load-bearing beams to account for settling. They were manual jacks meant to be adjusted every decade. I found the release nut on the main jack supporting the living room floor. I gave it 2 full turns to the left. I did not break anything. I simply introduced a little bit of slack, just enough to let gravity do its job. I crawled back out of the tunnel. I slid the rock back into place. I walked back to my truck, wiping the red clay from my knees. I had not planted a bomb. I had just told nature that she was free to come inside. The next morning, I was sitting in the diner across the street drinking coffee and pretending to read a newspaper. At 9 a.m., Gavin arrived with Marcus Thorne and an architect. They were smiling. They were shaking hands. They walked up the driveway ready to sign the deal of the century. Gavin opened the front door with a flourish. "Welcome to your new project, Marcus," Gavin said, his voice carrying across the quiet street. Solid as a rock. They stepped inside. 10 seconds later, they stepped back out, but they were not smiling anymore. Marcus Thorne was holding a handkerchief to his nose. The architect was looking at the ground with a frown. "What is that smell?" Gavin Marcus asked loudly. "It smells like a swamp in there." Gavin looked panicked. He ran back inside. I took a sip of my coffee. When I closed that drainage valve, the groundwater had nowhere to go. By now, the basement would be holding about 6 inches of stagnant water, and that smell would be rising through the floorboards, permeating the drywall, soaking into the carpets. Gavin ran back out. He was sweating. "It is just a little leak," he stammered. "A busted pipe, maybe. I will get it fixed immediately. Just a minor issue." Marcus Thorne shook his head. He pointed to the exterior wall of the living room. "Look at that," Gavin Marcus said. I lowered my newspaper. I knew what he was pointing at. A hairline crack had appeared in the brickwork. It started at the foundation and zigzagged up toward the window like a lightning bolt. When I loosened the tension jack, the house had settled just a fraction of an inch. But a fraction of an inch is a mile in the world of luxury real estate. "That is a settling crack," Marcus said. "And that is a big one. This house is shifting, Gavin." No, Gavin cried. "That was not there yesterday. I swear, it is just cosmetic." Marcus Thorne turned around. He walked toward his Bentley. "I do not buy sinking ships, Gavin," he said. "And I certainly do not buy swamps. Call me when you have a structurally sound building. Or better yet, do not call me." The Bentley drove away, leaving Gavin standing alone on the driveway. He kicked the tire of his Range Rover. He screamed a curse word that made a woman walking her dog stop and stare. He pulled out his phone. I could see his hands shaking. He called a plumber, then he called a general contractor. For the next 4 hours, I watched a parade of vans pull up to the house. Men in overalls went in carrying toolboxes. They came out scratching their heads. They checked the main water line. It was fine. They checked the sewer line. It was fine. They checked the roof. It was fine. They could not find the problem, because the problem was buried 10 feet underground in a system that did not appear on any city blueprint. A system that only existed in the mind of Ray Bishop. Around 2 p.m., the lead contractor, a big man named Big Steve, walked out to talk to Gavin. I knew Steve. He was competent, but he was expensive. I cracked my window to hear better. "Look, Mr. Sterling," Steve said, wiping grease from his forehead. "We pumped the water out of the basement, but it just keeps coming back. It is rising up through the slab itself." "What does that mean?" Gavin demanded. "It means your hydrostatic pressure is off the charts," Steve said. "The water table has shifted or something is blocking the deep drainage. And that crack in the wall is serious. The southeast corner of the house is sinking. Fix it!" Gavin shouted. "Just fix it. I do not care what it takes." Steve took off his cap and sighed. "To fix this, we have to excavate," Steve said. "We have to jackhammer the entire basement slab. We have to dig down to the bedrock, install new French drains, and underpins the foundation with steel piers." "How much?" Gavin asked. Steve pulled out a clipboard. He did some quick math. "To do it right and to do it fast," Steve said, "you are looking at $200,000, maybe $250 depending on what we find down there. And I need 50% up front to start the crew." $200,000, Gavin gasped. He looked like he was going to vomit. "That is the price," Steve said. "Take it or leave it. But if you leave it, that crack is going to get wider. And in a week, that living room might collapse into the basement." Gavin looked at the house. He looked at the crack. He nodded slowly. "Fine," he whispered. "I will pay it. Just start digging." Steve nodded. "I will need a check or a wire transfer for $100,000 by end of day." Gavin walked to his car. He looked confident. He looked like a man who had a plan. I knew exactly what his plan was. He was going to drive to the storage unit where he kept his secret stash. He was going to open the safe where he hid the dirty money. He was going to grab the cash that Nia had supposedly thrown at me. I watched him speed away. I finished my coffee. It tasted sweet. I left a $5 tip for the waitress and walked out to my truck. I drove to the safe house where Booker was waiting. When I walked in, Booker was sitting at a table counting the money again. "How did it go, Ray?" Booker asked. I sat down. "Gavin just got a bill for $200,000, I said, "and he is on his way to pick up the cash to pay for it." Booker laughed. A deep rumbling sound. "He is going to open that safe and find a lot of air," Booker said. "And some old clothes," I added. Nia put my old work shirts in there. We sat in silence for a moment, imagining the scene. Gavin Sterling, the man who thought he could buy anything, was about to find out that his bank account was empty. He had a sinking house, angry investors, and a construction crew waiting for a check that was never going to clear. He was trapped. And like a rat in a corner, he was going to do something desperate. He was going to look for money in the wrong places. Booker pushed a stack of bills across the table. "We are ready," Ray Booker said. "The shell company is set up. Red Bishop Holdings is open for business." I picked up the business card Booker had printed. It was heavy black cardstock with gold lettering. Red Bishop Holdings, immediate financing for distressed assets. I put the card in my pocket. "Let us wait for the phone to ring," I said. "It won't be long." Back at the storage unit, Gavin was probably screaming. He was probably tearing the shelves apart looking for the black trash bag. He was realizing that the money he had stolen from the cartel, the money he had skimmed from his investors, the money that was his safety net was gone. He had evicted me, but I had evicted his future. Now he had a choice. He could confess to his cartel partners that he lost their money, or he could borrow from a stranger to cover his tracks. He would choose the stranger, and he would never suspect that the stranger holding the lifeline was the same man he threw out on the street. The foundation was cracking, Gavin, and you were standing right in the middle of the collapse. The sinking feeling in my gut was gone, replaced by the cold, hard calculation of a man framing a house. I watched from my truck parked down the street as Gavin paced back and forth on the front lawn. He was on his phone screaming at someone. It was probably the contractor demanding the deposit. The crack in the living room wall was growing, and so was the crack in Gavin's composure. He was desperate. And a desperate man makes mistakes. I had sent the signal that morning. It was an old school trick Nia and I had developed when she was a teenager trying to avoid boys I did not like. I placed a classified ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It was small, buried in the services section. It read, "Master carpenter available for restoration work. Call Bishop and daughter." Nia read the paper every morning over coffee, a habit she picked up from me. She knew that meant I was watching. She knew that meant she had to play her part. Gavin stormed into the house. Through the listening device, I heard him yelling, "Nia name." "Nia, get your purse," he shouted. "We are going to the bank." "Why?" Nia asked, her voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "Because we need a loan," Gavin snapped. "The contractor wants 50% down to fix the foundation. I need you to sign as a co-borrower. My credit is... well, it is tied up in other investments." It was not tied up. It was ruined. Gavin had maxed out every card he had. I listened as they drove to the First National Bank. I followed them, staying 2 cars back. Inside the bank, Gavin was sweating. He wiped his forehead with a silk handkerchief. He He sat across from the loan officer, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins. "We need $200,000, Gavin said, flashing his winning smile. "Just a bridge loan, short term." Mrs. Higgins looked at the paperwork. "We will need tax returns and a current statement of assets from both of you." Gavin pushed a folder forward. "Here it is. Everything is in order." Nia reached into her purse. She pulled out her documents. But she did not pull out the clean versions Gavin had prepared for her. She pulled out the real ones. The ones that showed the massive credit card debt Gavin had racked up in her name. The ones that showed the 3 missed mortgage payments on their condo downtown. She handed them over with a shaking hand. Mrs. Higgins adjusted her glasses. She typed on her keyboard. Her frown deepened. "Mr. Sterling," she said, "there is a problem." "Problem?" Gavin asked, his smile freezing. "What problem?" "According to this data, Mrs. Higgins said your debt-to-income ratio is over 80%, and Mrs. Sterling credit report shows a default on a personal line of credit last month." Gavin turned to Nia. His eyes were bulging. "What default?" he hissed. "I told you to pay that bill." I forgot," Nia whispered, looking down. "I thought you paid it." Mrs. Higgins closed the folder. "I am sorry, Mr. Sterling," she said. "We cannot approve this loan. You are considered a high-risk borrower." Gavin stood up. He slammed his hand on the desk. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. "I am developing the most exclusive property in this city. This is ridiculous." "Please lower your voice, sir, or I will call security," Mrs. Higgins said calmly. Gavin stormed out of the bank, leaving Nia to run after him. I watched from the parking lot. Gavin was kicking the tire of his Range Rover. He was trapped. The bank had said no. The contractor was waiting. The house was sinking. He needed a miracle, or a shark. I picked up my burner phone. I sent a text to Booker. "The bait is in the water," I typed. 10 minutes later, Gavin's phone rang. I heard it through the bug in his car. He looked at the number. It was blocked. He answered it angrily. "What?" he barked. "Mr. Sterling," a smooth, deep voice asked. "This is the office of Red Bishop Holdings." Gavin frowned. "Who?" "We are a private equity firm specializing in distressed assets," the voice said. It was Booker. He sounded professional, corporate, and completely cold. "We heard you ran into a snag with the financing on the Bishop property." Gavin straightened up. "How did you know that?" "We have our ears to the ground," Mr. Sterling, Booker said. "We understand you need liquidity fast. The banks are slow. We are not." Gavin's eyes lit up. It was the look of an addict being offered a fix. "How fast?" he asked. "Today," Booker said. "Wire transfer within the hour. But our terms are unique." "I do not care about terms," Gavin said. "I need $200,000. "We can do that," Booker said. "Can you meet at our satellite office in 30 minutes? It is a cigar lounge on Peachtree Street." "I will be there," Gavin said. He hung up. He looked at Nia. "Get in the car," he said. "I found a lender, a private equity firm. They know a winner when they see one." He did not know he was driving straight into the mouth of the wolf. I drove to the cigar lounge. I parked in the alleyway. Booker was already inside, sitting in a private booth in the back. He was wearing a 3-piece suit that cost more than Gavin's car. He looked like old money. He looked like power. Gavin walked in with Nia trailing behind him. He spotted Booker and hesitated. He saw a black man sitting in the power seat, and for a second his prejudice flared up. I could see the sneer form on his lips. He expected a white guy in a suit, not Booker Washington from the south side of Chicago. "Mr. Sterling," Booker said, not standing up. "Have a seat." Gavin sat down. He did not offer to shake hands. "So, you are Red Bishop?" Gavin asked, his tone condescending. "I represent the holding company," Booker said, lighting a cigar. "The question is, Mr. Sterling, do you want the money or not?" "I want it," Gavin said. "What is the rate?" 20%, Booker said, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. 20%. Gavin laughed. "That is robbery. The banks charge 7. "The banks turned you down," Booker said simply. "We do not check credit scores, Mr. Sterling. We check collateral." He slid a contract across the table. "We will lend you $250,000, Booker said. "Interest-only payments due weekly. Balloon payment of the principal in 90 days. "And the collateral?" Gavin asked, reading the paper. "The property," Booker said. "The deed to the house." Gavin paused. "That house is worth millions," he said. You want me to risk a $5 million asset for a $200,000 loan. If you do not fix the foundation, Booker said, leaning forward, the house is worth zero. It is a pile of bricks in a swamp. You need us, Mr. Sterling? We do not need you. Gavin looked at Nia. What do you think he asked? Not that he cared about her opinion, but he needed someone to blame if it went wrong. Nia looked at the contract. She saw the name, Red Bishop. Bishop. My last name, she knew. We have to do it, Gavin, she said softly. We have no choice. Gavin looked at Booker. He looked at the check sitting on the table. A cashier check for $250,000. It was his own money. The money Nia had taken in the trash bag. We were lending him his own stolen cash and charging him 20% interest to use it. Fine, Gavin said. He grabbed a pen. He signed the paper with a flourish. Done, he said. Booker picked up the contract. He checked the signature. A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Sterling, Booker said. Do not be late with the weekly payment. We are very strict about deadlines. Gavin grabbed the check. Yeah, whatever, he said, standing up. You will get your money. Once I flip this house, I will buy your little company. He walked out laughing. I sat in my truck watching him leave. He was holding a check that would fix the foundation. But he had just cracked the foundation of his entire life. I pressed the button on my earpiece. Did he sign it? I asked. He signed it. Booker's voice came through clear and satisfied. We own the deed, Ray. If he misses one payment, we foreclose. He will miss it, I said. I started the engine of my truck. Sign it, son. You just sold your soul to the devil. And the devil is a carpenter who wants his house back. The ink on the loan contract from Red Bishop Holdings was barely dry before Gavin Sterling started spending the money. He did not use the $250,000 to fix the foundation immediately. He did not call the structural engineers back to the site. No. Gavin did what Gavin always does. He threw a party. He called it a pre-sale gala. He wanted to show the world that Sterling Real Estate Ventures was still solvent. He wanted to parade his success in front of the Atlanta elite to drown out the rumors about the sinking house. He hired a catering company, a DJ, and a valet service. I stood at the bottom of the driveway wearing a red vest that was 2 sizes too small. Booker had pulled some strings with a contact who ran the valet company. To the guests arriving in their German sedans and Italian sports cars, I was just an old black man parking cars. I was invisible. I was part of the scenery like a fire hydrant or a mailbox. But to me, I was a spy behind enemy lines. It was a humid Georgia night. The air was thick with the smell of jasmine and expensive perfume. I watched the cars pull up. A Mercedes G-Wagon, a Bentley Continental, a Rolls-Royce Ghost. These were not just Gavin friends. These were his accomplices. The people who financed his shadow deals. The people who turned a blind eye when he forged documents. I opened the door of a silver Porsche. A man stepped out. I recognized him. It was Councilman Davis, the head of the zoning board. He handed me his keys without looking at me. Keep it close, boy, he said. I might need to leave early. I nodded. Yes, sir. I drove the Porsche around the corner to the designated parking area. It was dark there. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small black disc the size of a quarter. It was a high-frequency listening device Booker had given me. I slid my hand under the driver's seat. I pressed the device against the metal frame. It clicked into place magnetically. I walked back to the front. Next car, a black Cadillac Escalade. This belonged to a local contractor known for cutting corners. I parked it. I planted a bug in the glove box. Next car, a Lexus sedan belonging to a building inspector. I planted a bug under the dashboard. I was building a network. Every conversation these men had on their drive home would be recorded. Every secret they whispered, thinking they were safe in their soundproof luxury cabins, would be sent directly to Booker laptop. Around 9 p.m., the party was in full swing. I could hear the music thumping from the house. My house. The bass rattled the windows. I imagined the cracks in the foundation widening with every beat of the drum. Then the front door opened. Gavin stepped out. He was holding a glass of scotch. He was surrounded by a group of admirers, including Councilman Davis and a few young women who looked bored. Gavin was laughing. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. Then he saw me. He stopped mid-laugh. He squinted. He took a few steps down the walkway. Well, Gavin said, his voice loud enough to stop the conversation nearby. Look who decided to get a job. The guests turned to look. They saw an old man in a tight red vest standing next to a key rack. Is that... Isn't that your father-in-law? Someone asked. Gavin grinned. It was a cruel, predatory smile. It sure is, Gavin said. Ray Bishop, the master carpenter. He walked up to me. I stood my ground. I kept my eyes lowered, not out of submission, but out of control. If I looked him in the eye, I might hit him. And if I hit him, the game was over. Gavin circled me. He smelled of expensive scotch and arrogance. So this is what it has come to, Ray, he mocked. Parking cars for the people who actually matter. I guess you finally found your level. I did not speak. I held out my hand, waiting for the next set of keys. Gavin laughed. He turned to the crowd. You know, folks, this man used to think he ran this town. He thought because he could hammer a nail he was important. Now look at him. He is serving me. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out a key fob. It was heavy. It had a yellow shield on it. The Ferrari prancing horse. Gavin had bought himself a new toy. A red Ferrari 488 Spider. It was parked right in front of the entrance, shining under the floodlights. It was the car he bought with the money he stole from the cartel. The car he was paying for with the money I had just loaned him. Gavin held the keys up. Hey, Ray, he shouted. I looked up. Catch, he said. He threw the keys. He did not toss them gently. He threw them hard right at my face. I have good reflexes for a 72-year-old. I snatched them out of the air inches from my nose. The crowd gasped, then laughed nervously. Gavin stepped closer. His face was suddenly hard. The smile vanished. Park it, Ray, he hissed. And listen to me, old man. That car is worth $300,000 if you put a single scratch on it, if you scuff the rims, if you even breathe on the paint wrong. I will call the police and tell them you stole it. I will send you to prison for grand theft auto. Do you understand me? I gripped the keys. The metal dug into my palm. I understand, Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice flat. Good, Gavin sneered. Now move it. It is blocking the view. He turned his back on me and walked back to his guests. Watch the leather, Ray, he called over his shoulder. It is Italian. Do not get your poverty on it. I walked to the Ferrari. My blood was boiling. My heart was pounding a rhythm of pure rage. I wanted to drive that car right through the front door. I wanted to run him over, but I remembered the plan. I opened the door. The smell of new leather hit me. It smelled like money. I started the engine. It roared to life, a deep, aggressive growl. I drove it slowly around the corner to the darkest part of the lot. I put it in park. I turned off the engine. I sat there for a moment, breathing in the scent of my enemy's success. I needed to plant the bug. I reached for my pocket, but then I stopped. A Ferrari engine is in the back, but the trunk is in the front. Gavin was careless. I knew that. He was the kind of man who thought he was untouchable. He left his phone unlocked. He left his front door open. I wondered what he left in his car. I pulled the trunk release lever. The hood popped open with a soft hiss. I got out and walked to the front of the car. I lifted the hood. The trunk was small, mostly empty. There was a car cover in a bag, a bottle of detailing spray, and a leather portfolio. It was not a briefcase. It was a thin black leather folder embossed with the logo of Sterling Real Estate Ventures. I looked around. No one was watching. The valet stand was empty. The other drivers were busy. I picked up the portfolio. It was heavy. I opened it. Inside was a single legal pad and a stack of envelopes. I opened the legal pad. It was a ledger, but not a corporate ledger. This was handwritten. It was Gavin handwriting. I recognized the loops of his letters. I turned the page. My breath caught in my throat. It was a list of names, a list of dates, and a list of dollar amounts. June 12th, Councilman Davis, zoning permit, $15,000. July 4th, Inspector Thomas, safety violation override, $10,000. August 1st, City Planner Wilson, environmental impact waiver, $20,000. I flipped through the pages. There were dozens of entries. This was not just a list. It was a confession. Gavin was bribing city officials. He was paying them off to approve projects that were unsafe. He was paying them to look the other way when he built on wetlands. He was paying them to ignore the very cracks in the foundation that were sinking my house. And the envelopes. I opened one. Cash. Thick stacks of $100 bills, the same dirty bills that Nia had brought me. This was the delivery vehicle. Gavin was using the Ferrari to transport the bribes. He was so arrogant he left the evidence sitting in the trunk while he drank champagne 50 feet away. I looked at the house. I could see Gavin through the window laughing with Councilman Davis, the same Davis whose name was at the top of the list. I realized then that this was bigger than my house. This was bigger than a loan. This was a federal crime. This was racketeering. This was corruption. If I gave this to the police, Gavin would not just lose his money. He would go to prison for 20 years. But I could not take the folder. If it went missing, Gavin would know. He would panic. He might run, or worse, he might hurt Naya. I needed proof. I pulled out my phone, my old scratched smartphone with the cracked screen. I opened the camera app. My hands were steady now. The rage had turned into focus. I photographed every page of the ledger. I photographed the envelopes full of cash. I photographed the VIN number of the car to link it to Gavin. Click, click, click. I captured his soul on digital film. I closed the portfolio. I placed it back exactly where I found it. I closed the trunk gently. I walked back to the valet stand. I stood there in the dark, waiting for the party to end. Gavin came out 2 hours later, stumbling drunk, his arm around Councilman Davis. "Ray," he shouted, "bring the car." I ran to get the Ferrari. I pulled it up. I got out and held the door open. Gavin stumbled into the driver's seat. "Did you scratch it, old man?" he asked, slurring his words. "No, Mr. Sterling," I said. "It is exactly as you left it." "Good," Gavin said. "Maybe I will give you a tip next time." He roared away, tires spinning, leaving black marks on the driveway. I watched his taillights disappear. "You gave me a tip, Gavin," I whispered. "You gave me the whole playbook." I touched my phone in my pocket. "You threw the keys at me to humiliate me, but you just handed me the keys to your cell." Gavin Sterling was a man who believed that a fresh coat of paint could cover a rotting soul. After the disaster with the foundation and the loan from Red Bishop Holdings, he did not learn his lesson. He did not slow down. Instead, he doubled down. He used a portion of the loan money to patch the cracks in the walls with cosmetic filler, and he hired a staging company to fill the empty rooms with rented furniture. He wanted the house to look perfect. He wanted to flip it fast before the truth bubbled up from the basement again. And he found a buyer. I sat in my truck parked 3 houses down, watching through my binoculars. A lime green Lamborghini Urus pulled into the driveway. It was a loud, obnoxious car for a loud, obnoxious man. I recognized him immediately. It was Julian Blackwood. Blackwood was a tech mogul from Silicon Valley who had moved to Atlanta to build a crypto mining empire. He was young, arrogant, and he had more money than sense. He was exactly the kind of Mark Gavin loved. He was a whale, and Gavin was standing on the porch holding a harpoon disguised as a contract. I watched them shake hands. Gavin was smiling that used car salesman's smile, showing too many teeth. Naya was standing behind him, looking like a statue. She was wearing a dress that Gavin had probably picked out for her. She looked thin. She looked exhausted. But I knew she was watching me. I knew she was waiting for the signal. They walked inside. I put down the binoculars and picked up a small, heavy remote control. It looked like a garage door opener, but it was much more than that. 30 years ago, when I rewired the entire house, I installed a fail-safe system. I was always worried about electrical fires, especially with the old Georgia pine timber. So I built a master circuit interrupter. It was a heavy-duty industrial breaker hidden deep inside the wall cavity of the foyer behind the main distribution panel. It was designed to trip instantly if it detected a surge, protecting the house from burning down. But like everything else I built, it had a back door. I had wired a radio receiver to the trip mechanism. It was ancient technology by today's standards, but radio waves do not go obsolete. Gavin thought he controlled the house because he had the keys. He did not understand that a builder controls the house because he knows its veins. And the electricity was the blood. I looked at the house. The lights were blazing. The massive crystal chandelier in the foyer, which Gavin had bragged cost him $50,000, was shining like a diamond sun. I imagined Gavin standing under it, pointing up, telling Blackwood about the luxury, the elegance, and the class. I imagined Blackwood nodding impressed, ready to sign a check for $3 million. I took a deep breath. "Not today, Gavin," I whispered. I pressed the button. I held it down for 3 seconds. At first, nothing happened. Then I saw it. The lights in the living room flickered. It was not a subtle flicker. It was a violent strobe. On, off, on, off. Then came the surge. Inside the walls, the old copper wires heated up instantly. The failsafe mechanism kicked in, but I had modified it. Instead of just cutting the power, it sent a feedback loop through the main breaker. Boom! I heard the sound from the street. It sounded like a gunshot. The transformer on the pole outside the house sparked, sending a shower of blue sparks raining down onto the manicured lawn. Inside the house, chaos erupted. The lights did not just go out. The bulbs exploded. Pop, pop, pop. One by one, the expensive sconces in the hallway shattered raining glass onto the floor. But the main event was the foyer. The surge hit the chandelier. The massive fixture overloaded. Sparks flew from the ceiling mount looking like fireworks trapped indoors. The heat melted the cheap plastic bracket Gavin had used to replace my steel one. I watched through the window as the massive crystal beast detached from the ceiling. It fell. It crashed onto the marble floor with a sound that shook the neighborhood, a deafening cacophony of shattering crystal and twisted metal. I saw the front door fly open. Julian Blackwood ran out. He was screaming. He was covering his head with his hands. He ran straight to his Lamborghini, not even looking back. Gavin ran out after him. His face was black with soot. His suit was covered in dust. "Julian, wait!" Gavin screamed. "It is just a fuse. We can fix it. It is just a minor glitch." Blackwood spun around. His face was red with terror. "A glitch," he shouted. "You almost killed me. That thing missed my head by 6 inches." He pointed a shaking finger at the house. "That place is a death trap," Blackwood yelled. The lights exploded. The ceiling fell down. "It is cursed." "No, no," Gavin pleaded, grabbing Blackwood's arm. "It is just old wiring. I will discount the price. I will take off $500,000. Get off me," Blackwood snapped, shoving Gavin away. "I do not want your discount. I do not want your house. I am telling everyone. I am posting this on Twitter. I am telling every investor in this city. This house is haunted. It is trying to kill people." He jumped into his Lamborghini and peeled out, leaving Gavin standing in a cloud of exhaust fumes. I sat in my truck and allowed myself a small, cold smile. The house was not haunted. It was just loyal. It knew who its master was. And it rejected the imposter. I watched Gavin. He stood there for a long time, staring at the tire marks on the pavement. The smoke from the blown transformer drifted over him like a fog. The value of the property had just plummeted. A structural crack was one thing. A house that exploded and tried to crush a billionaire was another. The rumors would spread by morning. The Sterling Heights project was dead. The house was now a liability. A pariah. Gavin turned around and walked back toward the house. He walked stiffly like a machine that was malfunctioning. He walked past the broken glass. He walked past the ruined chandelier. He found Nia standing in the hallway. She was holding a broom trying to sweep up the crystals. She looked terrified. Gavin stopped. He looked at the destruction. Then he looked at her. He did not see a wife. He did not see a partner. He saw a scapegoat. "You," he whispered. Nia looked up. "Me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You jinxed it," Gavin said. His voice was rising, getting louder and sharper. "Ever since you started acting weird, everything has gone wrong. The eviction, the foundation, now this." "That is not fair, Gavin," Nia said, stepping back. "It was an electrical surge. I had nothing to do with it." "You are a curse!" Gavin shouted. He kicked the pile of broken glass, sending shards skittering across the floor. "You are bad luck, Nia. You and your crazy father. You brought this on me. You are trying to ruin me." He advanced on her. His eyes were wild. The veins in his neck were bulging. "I gave you everything," he screamed. "I gave you a life. I gave you clothes. I gave you a name. And this is how you repay me, by bringing your bad juju into my investments." Nia backed up until she hit the wall. "Gavin, I am sorry. Please calm down." "I am done being calm," Gavin roared. He raised his hand. It was not a gesture of frustration. It was a gesture of violence. He pulled his arm back. His hand curled into a fist. I watched, on the hidden camera feed on my phone. The image was grainy, but I saw it clearly. My heart stopped. If he hit her, if he touched a single hair on her head. I reached for the door handle of my truck. I was ready to run in there. I was ready to tear him apart with my bare hands. I did not care about the plan. I did not care about the money. I was a father first. But then I saw Nia's face. She did not flinch. She did not close her eyes. She looked him straight in the face. And in that moment, she looked exactly like me. Go ahead, Gavin, she whispered. Do it. Gavin froze. His fist hovered in the air. Hit me, she said. Make sure you leave a mark, because the police are already watching this house. And if I walk out of here with a bruise, you won't just be bankrupt, you will be in a cage. Gavin's hand shook. He looked at her. He looked at the wreckage of his ambition. He lowered his hand slowly. He spat on the floor right next to her feet. Get out of my sight, he hissed. Go to your room, and do not come out until I tell you. Nia stared at him for 1 second longer. Then she turned and walked away. She walked with dignity. She walked with power. Gavin stood alone in the dark hallway, surrounded by the shattered remains of his ego. I released the door handle of my truck. My breathing was ragged. He had not hit her. Not this time. But he had crossed the line. He had shown his true nature. The violence was no longer hidden. It was right there on the surface, waiting to explode. I picked up my phone. I dialed Booker. It is time. Booker, I said. Is everyone okay? Booker asked. For now, I said. But the house is dark, the buyer is gone, and the rat is cornered. What do you want to do? Booker asked. Release the sharks, I said. Send the demand letter. Call in the loan. He missed his payment. Booker. Foreclose on him. I hung up. I looked at the dark house one last time. You tried to strike my daughter, Gavin. Now I am going to strike you down. And unlike you, I won't miss. I sat in the darkness of the truck cab with the engine off. The only light came from the screen of my smartphone where a grainy black and white video feed was playing. It was a live stream from the hidden camera I had installed in the hallway of my own house. On that small screen I saw my son-in-law Gavin Sterling raise his fist. I saw him tower over my daughter Nia. I saw the veins bulging in his neck as he screamed at her, blaming her for the chandelier that had just crashed to the floor. I watched as he pulled his arm back. I saw Nia flinch. In that split second, something inside me snapped. It was not a quiet snap like a twig breaking. It was a loud, violent fracture like a support beam giving way under too much weight. I reached for the door handle. My hand was shaking not from fear, but from a rage so pure and so hot, it felt like I had swallowed a live coal. I wanted to run into that house. I wanted to kick down the door. I wanted to wrap my hands around Gavin's throat and squeeze until the arrogance drained out of his eyes forever. I am a carpenter. I have hands that can bend steel rebar. I knew exactly how much pressure it would take to crush a windpipe. It would take me less than 10 seconds to end him. I opened the truck door. I put one foot on the pavement. But then I stopped. I looked at the house. I looked at the neighborhood where I had lived for 40 years. If I went in there now, I would kill him. There was no doubt in my mind. And if I killed him, I would go to prison for the rest of my life. I would leave Nia alone. I would leave her with his debts. I would leave her with the wreckage of his crimes. She would be the widow of a murdered man, and I would be the violent father who snapped. Gavin would be the victim. I would be the monster. And Nia would still be trapped. I pulled my leg back into the truck. I slammed the door shut. I locked it. I took a deep breath. I forced the air into my lungs. I forced my heart to slow down. I looked at the screen again. Gavin had lowered his hand. He was storming away, leaving Nia standing alone in the hallway. He had not hit her, not physically, but he had shown his intent. He had shown me that the clock had run out. I cannot kill him with my hands, I whispered to the empty truck, so I will kill him with paper. I will kill him with the one thing he loves more than power. I will kill his money. I picked up my phone. I closed the camera app and opened the photo gallery. I scrolled to the pictures I had taken the night of the party, the pictures from the trunk of his Ferrari, the ledger, the cash, the list of names, Councilman Davis, Inspector Thomas, City Planner Wilson. This was the ammunition. I had planned to hold on to this. I had planned to use it as leverage later, but watching him raise his fist at my baby girl changed the timeline. Later was now. I needed to send this to someone who could hurt him. The police would take too long. An investigation could take months. I needed immediate destruction. I needed a nuclear option. I thought about Marcus Thorne, the billionaire developer who had just run out of the house screaming because the chandelier almost crushed him. Thorne was a shark. He was the biggest developer in Atlanta. If he found out that Gavin was bribing officials to get permits on dangerous projects, he would not just sue. He would destroy Gavin to protect his own property values. I drove to a coffee shop 3 miles away. I parked in the back where the Wi-Fi signal was strong. I did not want this traced back to my phone data. I created a new anonymous email account. The username was simply Justice for Atlanta. I composed a new email. The subject line was clear: the corruption of Sterling Real Estate Ventures. I attached every photo, the ledger pages showing the bribes, the envelopes of cash, the VIN number of the Ferrari used to transport the money. I wrote a short message. Mr. Thorne, you almost died tonight in a house built by Gavin Sterling. That house is just the tip of the iceberg. Gavin is paying off city officials to bypass safety inspections on all his projects. He is a liability to this city and a danger to the public. Here is the proof. Do what you will. I added the email addresses of 3 other major developers in the city. I added the tip line for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and for good measure, I added the email of the Internal Affairs Division of the City Planning Office. I looked at the send button. Once I pressed this, there was no going back. Gavin world would not just crack, it would shatter. I thought of Nia's face when she flinched. I pressed send. I watched the progress bar. Sending. Sent. I threw the burner phone into the trash can outside the coffee shop. It was done. I went back to the safe house where Booker was waiting. I told him what I did. Booker nodded slowly. You just lit the fuse, Ray, Booker said. Now we watch it burn. The next morning the explosion happened. But it was not a loud bang. It was the sound of telephones ringing. I was parked down the street from the house again, watching. At 8 a.m., a city vehicle pulled up. It was not a normal inspector. It was a code enforcement supervisor. He slapped a bright orange sticker on the front door of my house. Stop work order, unsafe structure. Gavin ran out in his bathrobe. He was screaming at the officer. He tried to rip the sticker off. The officer grabbed his wrist and pushed him back. I saw Gavin retreat into the house. But that was just the beginning. By 9 a.m. the news broke. I listened to the radio in my truck. Breaking news, the reporter said. A massive corruption scandal is rocking the Atlanta real estate market this morning. Leaked documents allege that Sterling Real Estate Ventures has been systematically bribing city officials to bypass safety codes. By 10 a.m., Gavin's phone was blowing up. Through the bug in his car, which was parked in the driveway, I could hear him screaming. What do you mean you are freezing the accounts? He yelled. You cannot do that. I have payroll on Friday. He listened for a moment, then threw the phone against the dashboard. The bank had frozen his assets. The allegations of bribery and money laundering had triggered an automatic suspension of his business accounts. He was cut off. He ran back into the house. Through the listening device in the kitchen, I heard him tearing the room apart. Where is the cash? He screamed at Nia. Do we have any cash left? No, Nia, said her voice calm. You spent it all, Gavin. You spent it on the Ferrari. You spent it on the party. You spent it on the bribes. Gavin let out a howl of frustration. He was pacing the floor. I could hear his footsteps. He was trapped. His projects were shut down. His investors were calling for his head. His bank accounts were locked. He had exactly one lifeline left, or so he thought. He picked up his phone again. He dialed a number. I knew who he was calling. Booker's phone rang in the safe house. Booker put it on speaker so I could hear. Raymond Bishop Holdings. Booker answered, his voice smooth as silk. It is Sterling. Gavin shouted. I need more money. I need another 100,000. Today. Mr. Sterling, Booker said, his tone dropping 50 degrees. We have been watching the news. It seems you are having some legal troubles. It is all lies, Gavin stammered. It is a setup. I just need a bridge loan to pay some lawyers. I will pay you back double. I swear. I am afraid that is not how we operate, Booker said. In fact, Booker continued, we have a clause in our contract, the material adverse change clause. It states that if the borrower becomes involved in criminal investigations, or if the value of the collateral is compromised, we have the right to recall the loan immediately. Recall. Gavin gasped. What does that mean? It means the full balance is due, Mr. Sterling, Booker said. $250,000, plus the interest, payable immediately. I do not have it, Gavin screamed. You know I do not have it. My accounts are frozen. That is unfortunate, Booker said. Because if you cannot pay within 24 hours, we execute the default clause. What default clause? Gavin whispered. We take the house, Booker said. No, Gavin cried. You cannot take the house. It is all I have left. It is worth $5 million. It has a stop work order on the door, Mr. Sterling, Booker said. And it has a cracked foundation. To us, it is just a distressed asset. Gavin was silent. I could hear his breathing heavy and ragged. Please, he begged. Just give me a week. I can fix this. I can sell the Ferrari. The Ferrari is evidence in a bribery investigation, Booker said. You cannot sell it. There was a long pause. You are ruining me, Gavin whispered. We did not ruin you, Mr. Sterling, Booker said. You ruined yourself. We are just the bank, and the bank always collects. Booker hung up. I sat in my truck. I watched Gavin walk out onto the front porch. He sat down on the steps. He put his head in his hands. He was sitting exactly where I had sat the morning he evicted me. He was broke. He was under investigation, and he was about to be homeless. I started the engine of my truck. I drove slowly past the house. Gavin looked up. He saw me. He saw the old man in the battered pickup truck. He did not shout. He did not curse. He just stared. He looked like a man who finally realized that he was not the player. He was the pawn. And the game was over. The auction house was located in downtown Atlanta, in a building that used to be a cotton warehouse. The floors were worn smooth by a century of boots, and the air always smelled of stale coffee and desperation. I knew this place well. I had bought lumber here back in the 80s when it was a supply yard, but today it was not selling raw materials, it was selling broken dreams. I sat in the back row wearing my charcoal gray Sunday suit. I had pressed it myself that morning using the heavy iron Clara had given me for our 5th anniversary. My shirt was white and crisp. My shoes were polished until they shone like obsidian. I was not the homeless man in rags anymore. I was not the victim who had been dragged off his porch. Today, I was Ray Bishop, and I was here to attend a funeral. But it was not my funeral. Gavin Sterling was standing near the front of the room. He looked like a man who was trying to hold up a collapsing ceiling with his bare hands. His suit was wrinkled, his hair was messy. He was pacing back and forth, his phone glued to his ear. I watched him through my dark sunglasses. I could read his lips. I need the money now, he was whispering. I do not care what the interest rate is, just wire it. He was talking to a loan shark. I knew the type. When the banks freeze you out and the legitimate lenders turn their backs, you go to the men who lend money based on how much you value your kneecaps. Gavin was desperate. He needed to buy the house back, not because he loved it, but because if he lost the house, he lost the only asset that could possibly cover his debts. And more importantly, he needed to save face. His ego was a balloon that had been punctured, and he was frantically trying to patch it with cash he did not have. The room filled up. There were investors looking for bargains. There were flippers looking for a quick profit. And there was Booker, sitting 3 rows ahead of me, posing as a representative of Red Bishop Holdings. Gavin did not see me. He did not see Booker. He only saw the prize. The auctioneer took the podium. He was a fast-talking man with a gavel that looked like a weapon. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, we are here to auction the property at 450 Oak Street. A prime development lot in a historic district. He did not mention the cracked foundation. He did not mention the exploding chandelier. He just sold the potential. Opening bid is $500,000, the auctioneer said. Gavin's hand shot up. 500, Gavin shouted. He looked around the room, daring anyone to challenge him. He wanted to intimidate the competition. He wanted to show them that he was still the king of Atlanta real estate. 550, a man in the front row said. 600? Gavin yelled immediately. 650, another investor called out. 700, Gavin screamed. I sat still. My hands were folded in my lap. I felt the weight of the bank card in my pocket, the card linked to the account where I had deposited the money from Red Bishop Holdings. The money that was actually Gavin's stolen cash plus the interest he had paid me plus the leverage Booker had secured. It was a beautiful circle. I was about to buy my house back with my enemy money. The bidding war heated up. 800,000, 900,000. Gavin was sweating. I could see the moisture staining the collar of his shirt. He was reaching his limit. He had managed to scrape together $1 million from the shadows, but that was his ceiling. $1 million, the auctioneer chanted. Do I hear 1.1? 1 million, Gavin shouted, and that is my final offer. The room went silent. The other investors looked at each other. $1 million for a house with structural issues and a stop work order was a risk. They started to shake their heads. They were professionals. They knew when to fold. Gavin smiled. It was a shaky, terrified smile, but it was there. He thought he had won. He thought he had bought himself another day of survival. Going once, the auctioneer said, raising his gavel. Gavin wiped his forehead. He let out a breath. Going twice. I stood up. I did not shout. I did not wave my arms. I simply raised my bitter paddle number 07. 1.2 million, I said. My voice was calm, deep, and carried to every corner of the room. Gavin spun around. He squinted into the dim light of the back row. At first, he did not recognize me. He saw a man in a sharp suit standing tall and proud. He saw a man with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they could crush stone. Then I took off my sunglasses. Gavin's eyes widened. His jaw dropped. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Ray, he whispered. The auctioneer looked at me. 1.2 million to the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 1.3? Gavin stared at me. He could not process it. In his mind, I was eating out of dumpsters. I was a senile old man living in a motel. How could I be here wearing a suit that cost more than his car payment bidding over $1 million? He looked at his phone. He looked at the loan shark standing in the corner of the room, a man with a scar on his cheek who was watching Gavin with cold, dead eyes. Gavin had borrowed enough to bid $1 million. He did not have 1.2. But fear makes people do stupid things. 1.3. Gavin screamed, his voice cracking. He looked at the loan shark. He mouthed the words, I will pay you back. The shark did not nod. He just crossed his arms. 1.3 to Mr. Sterling, the auctioneer said. Do I hear 1.4? I did not hesitate. 1.4 million, I said. Gavin turned purple. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. He was vibrating with panic. If he walked away now, he still owed the shark $1 million, but he would have no asset to show for it. He would be dead by sunset. He had to win. 1.45. Gavin shrieked. It is everything I have. 1.45. He was shaking. He was crying. Tears of pure terror were running down his face. The room was buzzing. Everyone was watching the duel. The young, arrogant developer versus the mysterious older man. The auctioneer looked at me. Mr. Sterling bids 1.45. Sir, do you wish to continue? I looked at Gavin. I looked at the man who had evicted me. The man who had mocked my poverty. The man who had called my life work junk. I walked out of the row. I walked down the center aisle. My dress shoes clicked on the wooden floor. Click, clack, click, clack. I stopped 10 feet from him. I looked him dead in the eye. $1.5 million, I said. I paused. Paid in cash, immediately. The room gasped. Cash, $1.5 million in liquid funds. That was power. That was undeniable. Gavin looked at me. He looked at my eyes. He was searching for a bluff. He was searching for the weakness he had exploited for years. But he found nothing. He found only concrete. Gavin stammered. He looked at the loan shark. The shark shook his head and turned to leave. The line of credit was closed. Gavin collapsed. He did not fall gracefully. His knees just gave out. He slid down to the floor, gripping the edge of a chair for support. He looked small. He looked broken. Sold, the auctioneer shouted, slamming the gavel down. To Mr. Ray Bishop for $1.5 million. The sound of the gavel was like a gunshot. It ended the war. I walked up to the podium. I pulled out a certified cashier check. I handed it to the clerk. Then I turned to Gavin. He was sitting on the floor looking up at me. He looked like a child who had lost his mother in a department store, where he whispered, "Where did you get the money, Ray? You are broke. You are a bum." I leaned down. I brushed a speck of dust from my lapel. "I am a carpenter, Gavin," I said softly. "I know how to build things, and I know how to save." I pointed to the door. "You should go, Gavin." I looked at the back of the room where the loan shark was waiting by the exit. "Your friend is waiting for you, and I do not think he wants to talk about real estate." Gavin looked at the shark. His face went white. He scrambled to his feet. He ran. He ran out the side door, dodging the investors, dodging the truth, running into a future that was going to be very short and very painful. I stood there in the center of the room. I owned my house again. Booker walked up to me. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Welcome home, Ray," Booker said. I looked at the deed the clerk was handing me. It was just a piece of paper, but it weighed a ton. It carried the weight of justice. I took it. "Thank you, Booker," I said. "Now, let us go see what he did to my walls." I walked out of the auction house. The sun was shining. I was Ray Bishop, and I was just getting started. The sound of the gavel striking the block was still echoing in the high ceilings of the auction house when Gavin Sterling finally snapped. For a moment he just stood there frozen like a statue made of cheap plaster that was about to crumble. His face was a mask of absolute disbelief. He looked at the auctioneer. He looked at the investors who were whispering behind their hands, and then he looked at me. I was standing calmly in the center aisle adjusting my silk tie. I looked like the man I used to be before he stole my life. I looked like Ray Bishop. The shock on Gavin's face turned into a twisted, ugly rage. He let out a primal scream that sounded more like a wounded animal than a human being. He did not care that we were in public. He did not care about the elite of Atlanta watching him implode. "You old thief," he screamed, lunging toward me. He scrambled over the chairs, knocking them aside. He rushed at me, his hands curled into claws. "You stole it!" he shrieked, spittle flying from his mouth. "You stole that money. You are a beggar. You are eating out of trash cans. I saw the photos. I saw you sleeping in the park. Where did you get $1 million? He reached me and grabbed the lapels of my suit. He tried to shake me, but Gavin forgot something. He spent his days in air-conditioned offices lifting nothing heavier than a fountain pen. I spent 40 years lifting lumber, carrying bags of concrete, and framing houses with a hammer that weighed 3 pounds. My hands were old, but my grip was steel. I did not move an inch. I grabbed his wrists. I squeezed. Gavin gasped in pain. His grip on my suit loosened. I pushed him back. Not hard, just enough to send him stumbling into a row of folding chairs. He fell awkwardly, his expensive Italian shoes slipping on the polished floor. I brushed off my chest. "I am not a beggar, Gavin," I said, my voice low and dangerous, filling the sudden silence of the room. "And I am not a thief." Gavin scrambled to his feet, panting heavily. "You are a bum," he yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You have nothing. I took everything from you. I took your house. I took your daughter. I took your dignity. You are trash, Ray. You are just trash." I smiled. It was a cold smile. The kind of smile a judge gives before delivering a life sentence. "You are right," I said. "I was trash to you. You threw me out. You had my own daughter throw a black plastic bag at my chest and tell me to leave." I took a step closer to him. "But you know what they say about trash, Gavin. One man trash is another man treasure." I patted the pocket where the cashier check had been. "I did not steal this money, son. I just collected what you threw away. I am not a beggar. I am a sanitation worker. And today I am cleaning up the mess you made of my family." Gavin's eyes darted around the room. He looked trapped. "Call the police," he shouted to the auctioneer. "Arrest him. He is laundering money. That cash is illegal." The auctioneer looked uncomfortable. He looked at the certified check in his hand. "Mr. Sterling," the auctioneer said, "the funds are verified. This is a legal transaction. The property belongs to Mr. Bishop. No." Gavin screamed. "It belongs to me. I have the financing. I have a lender." He looked desperately into the crowd. "Where is he?" he yelled. "Where is the rep from Red Bishop Holdings? We have a deal." I signed the contract. Booker stood up from the third row. He adjusted his fedora and walked slowly toward us. He was carrying his leather briefcase. "I am right here, Mr. Sterling." Booker said, his voice smooth and professional. Gavin looked relieved. He grabbed Booker's arm. "Tell them," he shouted. "Tell them you lent me the money. Tell them I have the funds to outbid him. I will pay the 20% interest. I will pay 30%. Just give me the check." Booker looked at Gavin, hand on his sleeve. He looked at it with disdain until Gavin let go. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, Mr. Sterling," Booker said. "Why not?" Gavin demanded. "We have a contract." Because Booker said, opening his briefcase, there is a conflict of interest. "What conflict?" Gavin asked. Booker pulled out a document. It was the Articles of Incorporation for Red Bishop Holdings. He held it up so Gavin could read it. "Red Bishop Holdings is a private equity firm," Booker explained. "I am the managing partner, but I am not the owner." He pointed to the signature line at the bottom of the document. Gavin squinted. He read the name. Raymond Bishop, chairman and sole proprietor. Gavin froze. He stopped breathing. He looked from the paper to Booker and then slowly back to me. "Red Bishop," he whispered. "Ray Bishop." I nodded. "You borrowed money from me, Gavin," I said. "You signed a contract with me. You agreed to pay 20% interest to the man you evicted. You put up my own house as collateral to borrow my own money." Gavin's face turned a sickly shade of gray. His knees began to shake again. You set me up," he stammered. "I did not set you up," I said. "I just gave you a rope. You are the one who tied the noose around your neck." I stepped closer until I was right in his face. I could smell the fear coming off him in waves. "Let us do the math, Gavin," I said. "You owe the cartel $1 million because Nia gave that money to me. You owe the contractor $200,000 for a job he never finished. And now," I said, tapping his chest with my finger, "you owe Red Bishop Holdings $250,000, plus interest, plus penalties." Gavin's mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. But I used that money," he whispered. "I used it to pay the deposit. I used it to pay the bribes." "It is gone," I know, I said. "So here is the situation, son. I bought the house for $1.5 million. That money goes to the bank to pay off the mortgage you defaulted on. But you, Gavin, you are walking out of here with nothing. Actually, I corrected myself. Less than nothing. You borrowed my money to try and buy my house. You failed. So now you do not have the house, you do not have the money, but you still have the debt. You owe me $250,000, Gavin. And I am not a patient lender." Gavin looked like he was going to vomit. He looked around the room, hoping for an ally, hoping for anyone to step in and say this was a nightmare. But the room was silent. The investors looked at him with pity and disgust. They saw a man who had been outplayed completely and utterly. "Ray, please," Gavin whimpered. He grabbed my sleeve. His arrogance was gone. He was just a terrified boy now. "We are family. You cannot do this. I will go to jail." "You should have thought about family before you threw me off my porch," I said, pulling my arm away. I turned to walk away. "But I am not the one you should be worried about, Gavin," I said over my shoulder. I nodded toward the back of the room. The heavy double doors of the auction house were open. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright sunlight, was a man. He was not a banker. He was not a lawyer. He was wearing a black leather jacket. He had a scar running down his left cheek. He was the loan shark Gavin had been whispering to earlier, the man who represented the people Gavin had originally stolen the money from, the people whose chop mark was on the bills Nia had given me. The shark was not alone. 2 other men stood behind him. They were watching Gavin with the cold, dead eyes of predators who had just realized their prey was injured. Gavin followed my gaze. He saw them. His blood ran cold. I could see the terror seize his muscles. He knew who they were. He knew what they wanted. He owed them money. He owed me money. And he had nothing left to pay anyone. "Oh God," Gavin whispered. "Oh God, help me." He turned to me, reaching out a hand. "Ray, please," he begged. "Let me come with you. Do not leave me here. They will kill me." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had threatened to beat my daughter, the man who had bribed officials, the man who had poisoned my life for years. I adjusted my cuffs. "I am sorry, Gavin," I said. "I am just a trash collector. I only pick up what is on the curb." I looked at the sharks in the doorway. "It looks like your ride is here." I signaled to Booker. "Let us go," I said. "We have a house to renovate." We walked down the aisle. I held my head high. I heard Gavin sobbing behind me. I heard him pleading, Ray, wait." I did not stop. I did not look back. I walked past the sharks at the door. They nodded to me, respectful of the game I had played. They stepped aside to let me pass. Then they stepped forward, blocking the exit. I walked out into the fresh air. The sun was warm on my face. Behind me, the doors of the auction house swung shut, sealing Gavin inside with his consequences. He had wanted to be a big shot. He had wanted to play in the major leagues. Well, he was in the game now. And he was about to find out that when you play with the devil, you do not get to call a timeout. The auction house was silent except for the sound of Gavin's sterling, heavy breathing. He was on his knees on the hardwood floor, trapped between the loan sharks blocking the exit and the reality of his bankruptcy standing in front of him. He looked like a man drowning in the middle of the ocean, desperately searching for a piece of driftwood. And then his eyes found Nia. My daughter was standing near the wall where she had watched the entire bidding war unfold. She had been silent. She had been still. To Gavin, she was just furniture. She was just a prop. He moved around to make his life look perfect. He thought he owned her, just like he thought he owned my house. He crawled toward her. It was a pathetic sight. The man who wore $3,000 suits and drove a Ferrari was crawling on his hands and knees toward the woman he had threatened to hit just days ago. Nia. He rasped, his voice cracking with panic. Nia, baby. You have to help me. He reached out and grabbed the hem of her dress. Your father is crazy, Nia. He is vindictive. Look at what he is doing to us. He is destroying our future. Gavin looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the sweat and the grime of the floor. Tell him, Gavin pleaded. Tell him to stop. Tell him to give me the house. We can fix this. I can fix this. I just need you to talk to him. You are his daughter. He listens to you. I stood there watching. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to step in. I wanted to kick his hand away from her. But I held back. This was not my moment. This was hers. For years, Nia had lived in the shadow of this man. She had lived under the tyranny of his surveillance cameras and his emotional abuse. She had been small. She had been quiet. But today, the silence ended. Nia looked down at him. Her face was calm. It was the calm of a storm that had finally passed, leaving only clarity behind. She pulled her dress away from his grip. She did it slowly, deliberately, like she was peeling off a dirty bandage. Get up, Gavin, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried through the room like a bell. Gavin blinked. He looked confused. He expected her to cry. He expected her to comfort him. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his eyes. See, he said, turning to look at me with a sudden flash of his old arrogance. She is on my side, Ray. She knows who takes care of her. She knows who pays the bills. Nia walked past him. She did not even look at him. She walked straight toward me. The room watched in breathless anticipation. The investors, the auctioneer, even the loan sharks by the door seemed to freeze. Nia stopped in front of me. She looked into my eyes. Hi, Dad, she whispered. Hi, baby girl, I said. She reached down behind the row of chairs where she had been standing. She pulled out a black plastic trash bag. It was identical to the one she had thrown at me on the porch the day of the eviction. It was heavy. It was lumpy. It was tied with a double knot. Gavin saw the bag. He frowned. What is that? He asked. What are you doing, Nia? Nia turned around. She held the bag with both hands. She walked back toward Gavin. Do you remember this bag, Gavin? She asked. Gavin looked confused. It is a trash bag. What does that matter? We need money, Nia. We need to get out of here. Nia took a step closer. You told me to throw my father away, she said. You told me he was trash. You told me his life work was junk. You made me stand on that porch and humiliate the only man who has ever truly loved me. I did it for us, Gavin shouted. I did it so we could build the condos, so we could be rich. Nia shook her head. No, Gavin. You did it for you. You did it because you are empty inside. And you try to fill that emptiness with things you steal from other people. She lifted the bag. You thought I threw my father away that day, she said. But I didn't. She looked at me and smiled a sad, proud smile. I was not throwing him out, Gavin. I was arming him. Gavin's eyes went wide. What are you talking about? He whispered. The money, Nia said. The $900,000 you stole from the cartel. The money you hid in the safe. The money you thought was safe because you had cameras everywhere. Gavin's face turned the color of chalk. You took it, he gasped. I took it all, Nia said. I put it in that bag, and I threw it right at the one person smart enough to know how to use it. She took a step closer to him. My father used your money to build Red Bishop Holdings, Gavin. He used your stolen cash to lend it back to you. You have been paying interest on your own theft. Gavin staggered back. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. The realization hit him like a freight train. The irony was so heavy it almost crushed him. He had financed his own destruction. You set me up, he screamed, pointing at her. You are a thief. You are my wife. How could you do this? I am not your wife anymore, Gavin, Nia said. She lifted the bag higher. And this, she said, this is for you. She threw the bag. She did not toss it gently. She put her whole body into it, just like I taught her to throw a softball when she was 10. The heavy black bag hit Gavin square in the chest. Oof! Gavin grunted, stumbling back and falling onto the floor again. The bag split open. But this time money did not fall out. Old clothes spilled onto the polished floor. Gavin expensive Italian suits, his silk ties, his monogrammed shirts. They were wrinkled and dirty. Nia stood over him. She looked like a queen. She looked like a bishop. Here's your trash, she said, her voice ringing with power. Take it and get out of my life. Gavin sat there surrounded by his clothes. He looked at the pile of fabric. He looked at Nia. He looked at me. He started to laugh. It was a high-pitched, manic laugh, the sound of a mind that had snapped. You think you won? He cackled. You think this is over? I am Gavin Sterling. I know people. I know judges. I will sue you both. I will drag you through court until you are dead. You stole my money. That is grand larceny. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You admit it, he screamed. You admit you have the cartel money. That is illegal funds, Ray. You are going to jail. I adjusted my tie. I looked at him with pity. I do not have the money anymore. Gavin, I said. What? Gavin stopped laughing. What do you mean? I spent it, I said. I spent $1.5 million buying this house. The money is in the bank now. It is in the escrow account of the auction house. It is clean. But I added, walking closer to him, there was something else in that bag besides the money. Gavin's eyes darted back and forth. Something else, he whispered. The ledger, I said. Gavin's face went blank. The color drained from his lips. The ledger you kept in the safe, I continued. The one with the names of every cartel member you washed money for. The one with the dates of every bribe you paid to the city officials. The one you thought was so safe. Gavin started to shake. No, he whispered. No, no, no. I nodded. Nia gave me that ledger too, I said, and I added a few pages to it. The photos I took from the trunk of your Ferrari, the list of councilmen on your payroll. Gavin scrambled backward, crab walking across the floor, trying to get away from me. Where is it? He screamed. Where is the ledger? Give it to me. I checked my watch. I do not have it, I said. I mailed it yesterday, Gavin. To who? He gasped. I did not have to answer. At that exact moment, the main doors of the auction house flew open with a crash that shook the walls. This time it was not loan sharks. 6 men in blue windbreakers burst into the room. They moved with military precision. They had guns on their hips and badges on their chests. FBI. Everyone stay where you are, a voice boomed. Behind them came 4 uniformed police officers. Gavin froze. He looked at the door. He looked at the window. He looked for a way out, but there was none. One of the agents, a tall woman with stern eyes, walked straight toward us. She held up a picture. It was Gavin mugshot from a DUI arrest 5 years ago. Gavin Sterling, she asked. Gavin tried to stand up, but his legs would not work. He just nodded weakly. You are under arrest, the agent said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. For what? Gavin whimpered. Racketeering money, laundering wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit bribery, the agent listed the charges like she was reading a grocery list. She grabbed Gavin's arm and pulled him up. She spun him around and slammed him against the wall. Click, click. The handcuffs locked into place. Gavin looked over his shoulder. He looked at me. He looked at Nia. Dad, he sobbed. Nia, please. Do not let them take me. I am scared. Nia did not look away. She did not flinch. You should be scared, Gavin, she said softly. The agent began to drag him away. Wait! Gavin screamed, struggling against the cuffs. It was the old man. He set me up. He has the money. Check his accounts. He is the mastermind. The agent stopped. She looked at me. Mr. Bishop, she asked. Yes, ma'am, I said. We received the package you sent, she said. The ledger, the photos, the flash drive. It was very thorough. The district attorney sends his regards. You saved us months of work. I nodded. Just doing my civic duty, agent. She nodded back respectfully. Then she shoved Gavin toward the door. No, Gavin wailed. No. I am Sterling. I am important. I watched as they dragged him out. He was kicking and screaming, his expensive shoes scuffing the floor, his dignity left in a pile of dirty clothes next to the trash bag. The loan sharks by the door watched him go. They looked disappointed that they did not get to break his legs, but they knew better than to mess with the feds. They slipped away into the shadows. The room was quiet again. I looked at Nia. She was trembling now. The adrenaline was fading and the reality was setting in. She had sent her husband to prison. She was alone. I walked over to her. I opened my arms. She collapsed into me. She buried her face in my shoulder and began to sob. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. Tears of a prisoner who had finally walked out of the cell. I held her tight. I smelled her shampoo. It smelled like lavender. It smelled like my little girl. I got you, baby, I whispered, stroking her hair. I got you. She looked up at me, her eyes shining. We did it, Dad, she said. We beat him. I looked at the deed in my hand. I looked at the empty doorway where the monster had been dragged out. We did not just beat him, Nia, I said. We buried him. I took her hand. Come on, I said. Let us go home. I think we have some renovations to do. We walked out of the auction house together, leaving the trash bag on the floor where it belonged. The Fulton County Jail is a place where time does not just stop, it stagnates. The air inside smells of industrial bleach and unwashed bodies. It is a smell that sticks to your clothes and seeps into your pores. I walked down the long corridor following the guard. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Click, clack, click, clack. It was the same rhythm as my dress shoes on the auction house floor, but the feeling was different. There, I walked with victory. Here, I walked with pity. I was here to see the man who tried to bury me. The guard stopped at a heavy steel door marked Interview Room B. He unlocked it with a large brass key. You have 15 minutes, Mr. Bishop, the guard said. Do not pass anything to the prisoner. No touching. I nodded. I understand. I walked inside. The room was small and painted a depressing shade of beige. There was a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 metal chairs bolted to the floor. Everything was bolted down. In here, nothing moved unless the state said it could move. Sitting on the other side of the glass partition was Gavin Sterling. He looked terrible. The last time I saw him, he was being dragged out of the auction house, screaming in his $3,000 suit. Now he was wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His hair, which used to be perfectly styled with expensive gel, was greasy and matted. He had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. He had not shaved in a week, and the stubble on his face made him look older. He did not look like the king of Atlanta real estate. He looked like a scared boy playing dress-up in a nightmare. He looked up when I sat down. For a moment I saw shame in his eyes. But then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by that familiar sneer. The arrogance was cracked, but it was not broken. Not yet. He picked up the black phone on the wall. I picked up mine. Hello, Gavin, I said. He stared at me through the scratched plexiglass. You look happy, Ray, he said, his voice raspy and thin. You came to gloat. Is that it? You came to see the animal in the cage. I did not come to gloat, I said calmly. I came to bring you something. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I pressed it against the glass so he could see. It is a receipt, Gavin. From the bank. I paid off the contractor. The foundation is being fixed. The crack in the wall is gone. The house is safe again. Gavin laughed. It was a bitter, dry sound. Good for you, he spat. You fixed the house. You won the battle, Ray. Congratulations. You played a good hand. I did not know you had it in you. I underestimated the old carpenter. He leaned forward, his chains rattling against the metal table. But you have not won the war, old man. I looked at him. The war is over, Gavin, I said. You are in here. I am out there. That looks like a victory to me. Gavin shook his head. His eyes burned with a manic light. This is temporary, Ray. My lawyer is already working on a plea deal. I have dirt on Councilman Davis. I have dirt on everyone. I will trade information for a reduced sentence. I will be out in 3 years, maybe 2 with good behavior. He smiled. It was a chilling smile. And when I get out, Ray, I am coming for you. I will sue you for fraud. I will sue you for the money Nia stole. I will tie you up in court until you are bankrupt. You are 72 years old. Time is on my side, not yours. By the time I get out, you will be in a nursing home or in the ground, and I will still be young. I will take it all back. The house, the money, everything. I listened to him. I listened to his threats and his delusions. He still did not get it. He still thought this was a game of chess where he could just reset the board. I put the phone down on the table for a moment. I looked around the room. I looked at the ceiling. I looked at the corners where the walls met the floor. I looked at the heavy steel door. Then I picked up the phone again. I sighed. You really do not know, do you, Gavin? Know what he snapped. You do not know where you are. I am in jail, Ray Gavin said, rolling his eyes. Do not be senile. No, I said, leaning in close to the glass. I mean, you do not know this building. I pointed a finger at the ceiling. Look up, Gavin. Look at those ventilation ducts. See how they are bolted with hex screws every 6 inches. Gavin frowned, looking up despite himself. So what? I pointed to the wall behind him. See that concrete block? See the texture. That is a Type 3 heavy aggregate mix, reinforced with number 5 steel rebar every 12 inches on center. Gavin looked at me like I was crazy. What are you talking about, old man? Why are you giving me a lecture on construction? Because I built this place, Gavin. The words hung in the air between us. Gavin blinked. You what? 1985? I said, my voice steady and hard. I was the foreman for the Bishop construction crew. We won the contract to build the north wing of the Fulton County Jail. I tapped the table with my finger. I poured this floor, Gavin. I framed these walls. I installed these windows. I know exactly how thick the steel is in that door. I know exactly how deep the foundation goes. I know every weld. I know every rivet. I know every crack and every seam in this entire building. Gavin went silent. He looked around the room again, but this time with a different expression. He was not looking at a room anymore. He was looking at me. I built this cage, Gavin, I whispered, and I built it to last. I sat back in my chair. You say you are going to get out. You say you are going to make a deal. But you are forgetting who you are dealing with. The district attorney is not looking for a deal. He is looking for a trophy. And you gave him one. I tapped the glass. The FBI has the ledger, Gavin. They have the names of the cartel members. Do you think those people are going to let you testify? Do you think they are going to let you cut a deal and talk? Gavin's face went pale. The blood drained out of his cheeks. You are safer in here, son, I said. Because out there, you are a loose end. And the people you borrowed money from do not like loose ends. But even if you do survive, I continued, even if you do get out in 10 years or 20 years, you will never take back what I have. Because what I have is not just a house. It is a legacy. I built my life on hard work and truth. You built yours on lies and bribes. I stood up. You are not trapped by these walls, Gavin. You are trapped by your own ambition. You are trapped by your greed. I looked at the drawing on the table, the architectural blueprint of the prison I had brought with me to show him. I unfolded it and pressed it to the glass. See this? I asked, pointing to a small square on the grid. This is interview room B. I moved my finger to the hallway. And this is cell block D. That is where you are going. I know the design, Gavin. There is no sunlight in block D. The windows are angled so you can see the sky, but you can never see the ground. It was designed to make men reflect on their sins. I folded the paper. I hope you have a lot of time to reflect, son. I hung up the phone. Gavin started screaming. He slammed his fist against the glass. He picked up the phone and yelled into it, but I had already cut the connection. I could hear his muffled voice through the thick partition. Ray, come back. Do not leave me here. I am sorry. I will sign anything. I will give up my rights. Just get me out. Ray, please. I looked at him one last time. I saw the boy who had married my daughter, the boy who had charmed us all with his smile and his ambition. I saw the potential he had wasted. He could have been a great builder. He could have been a great man, but he chose the shortcut, and shortcuts always lead to a dead end. I turned my back on him. I walked toward the heavy steel door. Guard, I called out. I am done here. The guard unlocked the door. Ray Gavin screamed, his voice cracking with pure desperation. Ray, look at me. I am family. I paused at the threshold. I looked back. You were family, Gavin, I said to the empty air. Now you are just another inmate in a house that Bishop built. The guard closed the door. Boom. The sound was heavy and final. It shut out the screams. It shut out the lies. I walked down the long corridor. Click, clack, click, clack. I walked out of the prison and into the bright Atlanta sunshine. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like freedom. I got into my truck. I checked my phone. There was a text from Naya. "Dinner is ready, Dad. Come home." I smiled. I started the engine. I was going home, to the house I built, to the daughter I saved. And behind me, in a concrete box of my own making, Gavin Sterling was learning the hardest lesson of all. You can build a castle out of lies, but eventually the builder comes to collect the rent. The yellow police tape had been removed from the front door, but the sticky residue remained on the wood frame. It was a small scar on the face of the house I had built, but it was nothing compared to what was waiting inside. I stood on the porch with the deed in my hand and my daughter standing beside me. Nia was shaking. She was holding a box of cleaning supplies, but she looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. "Ready?" I asked her. She nodded. "Ready, Dad." I put the key in the lock. It was the original brass key. I had never given Gavin this one. I had kept it on my ring for 40 years. It turned with a smooth, heavy click. We walked inside. The smell hit us first. It was the smell of stale champagne and rage. Gavin had not gone quietly. In the hours before he was arrested, he had turned his anger against the only thing he could hurt: the house. The living room was a war zone. The staging furniture was overturned. The expensive silk curtains were ripped from the rods lying in heaps on the floor like dead bodies. But it was the walls that broke my heart. Gavin had taken a golf club to the drywall. There were holes punched into the sheetrock every few feet. He had smashed the mirrors in the hallway. He had poured red wine over the oak floorboards I had laid in 1982. It looked like a tornado had touched down inside my living room. Naya gasped. She dropped the box of cleaning supplies. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Look at what he did. Dad, I am so sorry." She walked into the middle of the room, stepping over broken glass. She looked at the destruction and her shoulders began to shake. "I did this," she sobbed. "I brought him here. I let him in. I let him destroy your home." I walked over to her. The glass crunched under my boots. I looked at the holes in the wall. I looked at the wine stains soaking into the wood. To anyone else, this was a disaster. To a carpenter, it was just a punch list. Drywall can be patched, wood can be sanded, glass can be replaced. But a broken spirit that is harder to fix. I put my hand on Naya's shoulder. She flinched. She turned to me and her eyes were full of tears. "Dad," she said, her voice choking, "the trash bag, that day on the porch when I threw it at you, when I screamed at you." She covered her face with her hands. "I had to do it. But the look on your face, you looked so hurt. You looked like I had killed you. I have seen that look in my nightmares every night since. Can you ever forgive me?" I took her hands and pulled them away from her face. I looked her in the eye. "Nia," I said softly, "I remember that bag. It was heavy. It hit me right in the chest. It left a bruise that is still yellow and purple." Nia, fresh tears spilled over. "I am sorry," she wailed. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "That bag hurt, yes, but do you know what would have hurt more?" She shook her head. "If you had done nothing," I said. "If you had stayed silent. If you had let him win. That would have killed me." I pointed to the spot on the floor where the bag had landed. "You did not throw trash at me, Nia. You threw me a lifeline. You threw me a weapon. That bag was a grenade and you pulled the pin." I pulled her into a hug. I held her tight just like I used to when she was afraid of thunder. "You were brave, baby girl," I whispered into her hair. "You were a soldier behind enemy lines. And sometimes soldiers have to do hard things to survive." She cried into my shirt, soaking the fabric. We stood there in the ruins of the living room holding each other. The house was silent around us. It was listening. It was waiting. After a few minutes, Nia pulled back. She wiped her eyes. She looked at the mess again. So she sniffed. "What do we do now?" I smiled. I walked over to the corner where I had left my old tool belt the day I was evicted. Gavin had not touched it. He probably did not even know what it was. I picked it up. The leather was worn and soft. It smelled of oil and sawdust. I strapped it around my waist. The weight of the hammer on my hip felt like an old friend returning home. "We do what bishops always do," I said. "We work." I did not call a contractor. I did not call a cleaning crew. This was personal. You do not hire a stranger to heal your wounds. For the next week, the house echoed with the sounds of labor. But it was not the frantic, angry noise of Gavin destruction. It was the rhythmic, steady music of construction. Thud, thud, thud. That was the sound of my hammer driving nails into new studs. Zzzt, zzzt. That was the sound of my power sander smoothing out the scars on the floorboards. Swish, swish. That was the sound of Nia painting over the cracks in the walls, covering the gray paint Gavin loved with a warm butter yellow that Clara had always liked. We worked 18 hours a day. We ordered pizza and ate it on the floor. We laughed when we got paint in our hair. We sweated. We bled a little. And with every nail I drove, I felt the poison leaving the house. I was sanding the stain out of the floor when I felt it. The wood was responding. It was breathing again. The house was forgiving us. Nia was scraping wallpaper in the hallway. She called out to me, "Dad, come look at this." I stood up, brushing sawdust from my knees. I walked into the hallway. Nia was standing in front of a wall that Gavin had built. It was a strange addition. When Gavin took over the house, he had sealed off the old coat closet under the stairs and built a fake marble feature wall. He said it was modern. I always thought it was ugly. "I never liked this wall," Nia said, tapping the plaster with her scraper. "It sounds hollow." I walked up to it. I knocked on it with my knuckles. Thump, thump. It was hollow, but there was something else. A slight vibration, a metallic echo. "Gavin added this wall 2 months ago," I said. "He told me he was reinforcing the staircase, but there is no support beam here." I looked at the layout. The original coat closet was behind this drywall. "Hand me the sledgehammer," I said. Nia handed me the heavy 10-pound hammer. "You want to save the sheetrock?" she asked. "No," I said, gripping the handle. "I want to see what he was hiding." I swung the hammer. Crack! The drywall shattered. Dust filled the air. I swung again. Smash! A large hole opened up. I pulled away the broken pieces of gypsum. I shined my flashlight into the dark cavity. It was the old coat closet, all right, but the coats were gone. Sitting in the middle of the small dusty space was a safe. It was not the small portable safe he kept in the storage unit. This was a heavy industrial floor safe bolted into the concrete slab. It was black and menacing, sitting there like a spider in its web. Nia gasped. "Another safe." I nodded. "The safe in the storage unit was his petty cash," I said. "It was his walking around money." I stepped through the hole in the wall. I knelt down in front of the steel box. "This," I whispered, running my hand over the cold metal dial. "This is the archive." Gavin had hidden this behind a wall. He had sealed it up. He never intended for anyone to see it. Not Nia, not the cartel, not the police. "Why would he hide it here?" Nia asked, standing behind me. "Why not at the bank?" "Because banks have records," I said, "and storage units can be raided. But who looks for a safe inside a wall in a house you stole from an old man?" I put my ear to the door of the safe. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. It was locked tight. A complex tumbler mechanism. "Do you know the combination?" Nia asked. "No," I said. "But I know drills." I went to my truck and got my heavy-duty diamond-tipped drill. It took me an hour of grinding, screeching metal, an hour of sweat pouring down my face. Finally, I heard the click. The tumblers aligned. I put down the drill. My hands were vibrating from the force. I looked at Nia. "Whatever is in here," I said, "it was worth building a wall to hide." I grabbed the handle. I turned it. Clunk. The heavy steel door swung open. I shined the light inside. There was no money, no stacks of cash. There was just a single thick manila envelope and a small black velvet pouch. I reached in and took the envelope. It was heavy. I opened the clasp. I pulled out the contents. It was a medical file. I read the name on the tab. Clara Bishop. My breath stopped. My heart seized in my chest. Clara. My wife, Nia mother. She had died 3 years ago. Heart failure, the doctor said. It was sudden. It was tragic. Why would Gavin have her medical records? Nia whispered, her voice trembling. I opened the file. Inside was a toxicology report, a private report, not from the hospital, from a private lab. I read the summary. High levels of digoxin detected. Consistent with chronic poisoning over a period of 6 months. The room spun. I had to put a hand on the wall to steady myself. Digoxin. Heart medication. But Clara did not have heart trouble until the end. I looked at the date on the report. It was dated 1 week before she died, and underneath the report was a letter. A letter signed by Gavin Sterling addressed to a Dr. Eris. The letter read, "Ensure the autopsy is waived. I will handle the funeral home arrangements. The transfer of the deed depends on her passing before the end of the fiscal year." I dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor like a dead leaf. He did not just steal the house. I looked at Nia. She was reading the paper on the floor. Her scream was silent at first. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then a wail of pure agony ripped through the hallway. He killed her. I reached into the safe again. My hand was numb. I grabbed the black velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a ring. It was Clara wedding ring, the one that went missing at the hospital, the one Gavin said the nurses must have lost. He had kept it. He had kept it as a trophy. I squeezed the ring in my fist until the gold cut into my skin. The construction noise stopped. The healing stopped. The silence in the house was now the silence of a tomb. I looked at the hole in the wall. We had torn down the wall to find the truth, but we had found a monster. Gavin was in jail for fraud. He was looking at 10 years. But fraud was a white-collar crime. You get tennis courts and libraries in federal camp. I looked at the toxicology report. This was not fraud. This was murder. I stood up. I wiped the dust from my pants. Nia was on the floor clutching the medical file, rocking back and forth. "Get up, Nia," I said. My voice sounded strange. It sounded like it was coming from deep underground. "We are not done working. We have one more delivery to make to the FBI." And this time I said, looking at the ring in my hand, "We are not asking for a life sentence. We are asking for the needle." The dust from the shattered drywall was still settling in the hallway, hanging in the air like a ghost. I stood there holding the manila envelope, my hands covered in white powder and sweat. Nia was on her knees beside me, her eyes wide fixed on the paper in my hand. The house was silent. The hammers had stopped. The saws were quiet. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart against my ribs. I opened the metal clasp of the envelope. It made a sharp scratching sound. I pulled out the documents. They were not financial records. They were not bank statements or deeds to property. It was a medical file. I read the name on the tab, Clara Bishop. My breath caught in my throat. My wife, Nia Mother. The woman who had been the sunshine in this house for 40 years. The woman who died 3 years ago from what the doctors called sudden heart failure. "Why does he have mom medical records?" Nia whispered, her voice trembling. I flipped the page. It was a toxicology report from a private lab. Not the hospital lab where she died, but a private facility in Buckhead. I scanned the numbers. I did not understand all the chemical names, but I understood the summary at the bottom. High levels of digoxin detected in blood sample. Levels consistent with acute toxicity. Cause of death likely cardiac arrest induced by overdose. Digoxin. I remembered that name. Clara took medication for her blood pressure, but she never took digoxin. That was a strong heart medication. I looked at the date on the report. October 12th, 3 days before she died. I turned the page. There was a letter, a printed email. It was from Gavin Sterling. It was addressed to a man named Dr. Eris. The email was short. It was brutal. The subject line was update. The text read, "She is getting weaker. The dosage is working faster than expected. Ensure the death certificate lists natural causes. I need the probate process to start before the end of the fiscal year. The transfer of the deed depends on her passing. Do not fail me on this." I dropped the paper. It floated down to the floor, landing on the dust-covered hardwood. The room spun. I had to reach out and grab the door frame to keep from falling. He did not just wait for her to die. He killed her. He poisoned her. My mind flashed back to those last months. Clara getting sick. Clara complaining that her tea tasted bitter. Gavin offering to make her tea every evening. He played the devoted son-in-law. He brought her blankets. He sat by her bedside holding her hand while he fed her poison. He watched the life drain out of the woman I loved, and he did it for a house. He did it for a piece of land. "Dad," Nia whispered. She picked up the letter. She read it. A sound came out of her throat that I will never forget. It was not a scream. It was a howl. It was the sound of a soul ripping in half. "He killed Mom," she wailed. She curled into a ball on the floor, clutching the paper to her chest. He killed her. He murdered her. I sank down beside her. Tears were streaming down my face, hot and burning. I thought I had failed her. For 3 years I blamed myself. I thought I should have seen the signs. I thought I should have taken better care of her. I visited her grave every Sunday and apologized for letting her go, but I did not let her go. She was stolen. I looked at the black safe again. There was one more thing inside, a small black velvet pouch. I reached in and took it. My hand was numb. I opened the drawstrings. I tipped it over into my palm. A gold ring tumbled out. It sparkled in the beam of my flashlight. It was Clara's wedding band. The day she died at the hospital, the ring was missing from her finger. We searched everywhere. We thought it was lost in the bedding or stolen by a nurse. Gavin had hugged me and said, "Do not worry, Ray, it is just a ring. She is in a better place now. He had it the whole time. He took it off her dead finger. He kept it, not as a memory, but as a trophy, a souvenir of his crime." I closed my fist around the ring. The gold dug into my skin. The pain was sharp and grounding. Nia was still sobbing on the floor, rocking back and forth. I put a hand on her shoulder. "Nia," I said. She looked up at me. Her face was a mask of agony. "He is going to pay," she choked out. "He has to pay." I stood up. I wiped the tears from my face with the back of my dirty hand. The sadness in my chest was evaporating. It was being replaced by something else. Something cold. Something hard. Something that felt like iron. Gavin was sitting in a cell right now, facing charges for fraud and racketeering. He was looking at 10 years, maybe 5 with good behavior. He would get out. He would still be young. He would start over. That was not justice. Fraud is a crime against money. You pay a fine. You serve your time. You move on. But murder is a debt that can only be paid with a life. I looked at the ring in my hand. I looked at the medical report. I am not a lawyer. I said, my voice low and steady. I am a carpenter. And I know that when a structure is rotten to the core, you do not patch it. You condemn it. I helped Nia stand up. She was weak, but her eyes were burning with the same fire that was consuming me. "We are going to the district attorney," I said. "We are not going to sue him, Nia. We are going to bury him." We drove to the federal building in silence. I did not wash the drywall dust off my clothes. I did not change my shirt. I wanted them to see me as I was, a man who had just torn down a wall to find the bodies. We met with the lead prosecutor, a sharp woman named Mrs. Vance. She had been building the fraud case against Gavin. When we walked in, she looked surprised. "Mr. Bishop," she said, "we have enough for the indictment. You do not need to be here." I placed the manila envelope on her desk. "You have enough for fraud, Mrs. Vance," I said, "but you do not have this." She opened the envelope. She read the report. She read the email. Her face went pale. She looked up at us. "Is this authenticated?" she asked. "It was in his safe," I said, "behind a wall in my house." She picked up her phone. She dialed a number. "Get me homicide," she said, "and get me the medical examiner. We need to exhume a body." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. They exhumed Clara's body. The test confirmed it. Digoxin. The traces were still there in her hair follicles. Gavin was already in custody, but they moved him. They took him out of the low-security wing and put him in solitary confinement. 3 days later, we were in the courtroom for his arraignment. Gavin walked in. He looked tired, but he still had that smirk. He thought he was there to plead not guilty to bank fraud. He thought his high-priced lawyer was going to get him bail. He smiled at Nia when he saw her in the front row. He mouthed the words, "I will be out soon." I sat next to Nia. I held Clara's ring in my hand. The judge entered. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, "the prosecution has filed new charges." Gavin lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we are prepared to discuss bail on the fraud charges." The judge shook his head. "These are not fraud charges, counselor." Gavin frowned. He looked confused. The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, the state of Georgia charges Gavin Sterling with 1 count of first-degree murder with special circumstances, the premeditated poisoning of Clara Bishop for financial gain." The courtroom went silent. Gavin's face disintegrated. The smirk fell off like a mask made of wet clay. "Murder," he whispered. "No, no, that is impossible." The prosecutor held up the bag with the medical file and the ring. "We have the toxicology report, Mr. Sterling. We have your emails to the lab. And we have the victim wedding ring found in your private safe." Gavin's knees gave out. His lawyer had to grab him to keep him from falling. "Murder for financial gain is a capital offense in Georgia," the prosecutor continued. We are seeking the maximum penalty, life in prison without the possibility of parole." Gavin looked back at us. He looked at Nia. Her face was stone. He looked at me. I held up the ring. I let the light catch the gold. I saw the realization hit him. He knew where we found it. He knew his secret wall had been breached. "Ray," he mouthed. "Ray, help me." I just stared at him. I remembered Clara lying in that hospital bed. I remembered how she trusted him. I looked at the judge. "Remand without bail," the judge ordered. The bailiffs moved in. They did not touch him gently this time. They grabbed him by the arms. They shackled his legs. Clank, clank. The sound of the heavy chains was music to my ears. Gavin began to scream as they dragged him away. It was not me. "I did not do it. She was old. She was sick." He was still lying. Even at the door of hell, he was still lying. I watched him disappear through the side door. 10 years had just turned into forever. He was going to die in that prison. He was going to rot in the dark. And every time he closed his eyes, he would see the wall he built to hide his sins. I stood up. I put the ring in my pocket. "Let us go, Nia," I said. "Mom can rest now." We walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. It was bright and blinding. It was a new day. The debt was paid. And the devil was finally in his cage. The Georgia spring arrived early that year. The azaleas in the front yard exploded in shades of pink and white, reclaiming the earth that had been trampled by police boots and angry creditors just 6 months ago. The air smelled of wisteria and fresh-cut lumber. It was the smell of life returning to a place that had almost died. I stood in the center of the nursery. This used to be the guest room where Gavin would throw his coat and ignore me. Now it was painted a soft sage green. The sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, but this was not the dust of destruction. It was the dust of creation. I was sanding a piece of cherry wood. It was the headboard for a crib. I had been working on it for 3 weeks. I did not use power tools for this part. A baby needs silence. A baby needs the touch of a human hand, not the scream of a machine. I used a block of cork wrapped in fine grit sandpaper, moving with the grain back and forth, back and forth. The wood felt warm under my fingers. It felt alive. Nia walked in. She was moving slower these days, waddling slightly as she carried a tray of lemonade. She was 6 months pregnant. Her belly was a round, proud curve under her sundress. She looked beautiful. She looked like her mother Clara in 1975. The shadows under her eyes were gone. The fear that used to make her flinch when a door slammed was gone. She put the lemonade on the workbench. "Hey, Grandpa," she said, smiling. I smiled back. I liked the sound of that. Grandpa. It was a title better than chairman or CEO. "How is the little linebacker doing?" I asked, nodding at her stomach. "He is kicking," Nia said, rubbing her belly. "He likes the sound of the sandpaper. It puts him to sleep." I stopped sanding. I wiped my hands on my apron. "He is a bishop," I said. "We have sawdust in our blood. He knows the sound of work." Nia sat down in the rocking chair I had restored last week. She looked at the crib. "It is beautiful, Dad," she said softly. "Gavin wanted to buy a crib from Italy. He said it cost $4,000. It was made of plastic and gold leaf." I snorted. "Plastic cracks," I said. "And gold is cold. This is cherry wood. It grew right here in Georgia. It survived storms. It survived droughts. It is strong. That is what a baby needs. Strength, not shine." Nia nodded. She looked out the window at the garden. "I am glad I left him." "Dad," she said, "I am glad I am doing this alone." "You are not alone, Nia," I said. "I know," she said. "But I mean, I am glad I did not let him define me. I thought I needed a husband to be a mother. I thought I needed his money to be safe. But I do not need any of that. I just need to be me." She took a sip of lemonade. "I am going to name him Ray," she said. I froze. My throat felt tight. "Ray?" I asked. "Raymond Clara Bishop," she said. "After the 2 people who taught me how to stand up." I turned away, pretending to check the alignment of the crib slats. I did not want her to see the tears in my eyes. A man of 73 should not cry so easily, but lately my heart was so full it kept spilling over. "That is a good name," I managed to say. "A strong name." I finished the lemonade and wiped my mouth. "I have to go out for a bit," I said. "I have a meeting at the center." Nia smiled. "Don't be late." The students get restless if you are not there to yell at them about measuring twice. I drove my truck downtown, not to the fancy glass skyscrapers where Gavin used to do business, but to the west side, to the neighborhood where the warehouses were boarded up and the young men stood on street corners with nothing to do. I pulled up to an old brick building. Above the door was a new sign hand-painted in bold letters, the Bishop School of Trade. I walked inside. The sound of saws and drills filled the air. It was a symphony. 20 young men and women looked up when I entered. They were kids who had been told by society that they were nothing, kids who had dropped out of school, kids who had records, kids who reminded me of myself 50 years ago. I walked to the front of the room. Mr. Bishop, a young man named Marcus, called out. I finished the dovetail joint. I walked over to his workbench. Marcus was 19. He had spent 2 years in juvenile detention for theft. No one wanted to hire him. No one except me. I picked up the wooden box he had made. I ran my thumb over the joint. It was tight, seamless. I looked at him. You rushed the sanding on the corner, I said sternly. Marcus looked down. I wanted to finish before lunch. I put the box down. What is our motto, Marcus? We do not build for speed, Marcus recited. We build for forever. Exactly, I said. If you rush the sanding, the varnish won't stick. If the varnish doesn't stick, the wood rots. If the wood rots, the box breaks. I handed him the sandpaper. Do it again, and take your time. You are building a reputation, not a race car. Marcus nodded, taking the paper. Yes, sir. I walked to my office in the back. It was a small room with a window overlooking the shop floor. I sat at my desk. I opened the ledger. This was not a ledger of bribes. It was a ledger of hope. We were funded entirely by the profits from the Gavin Sterling affair, the interest he paid on the loan, the money we saved when I bought the house back for half its value. Every dollar that Gavin had stolen out of greed was now paying for hammers and chisels and work boots for these kids. I called it the Robin Hood Fund. We took from the worst kind of thief and gave it to the future. I watched the kids working through the glass. I saw them laughing. I saw them helping each other. I saw pride on their faces when they cut a board straight. This was the legacy, not the money, not the house, but this. I drove home as the sun was setting. The sky was a brilliant purple, bruised with orange. When I walked into the house, Nia was standing in the hallway holding the mail. She looked pale again, not the sick pale of before, but the pale of someone who had seen a ghost. What is it? I asked, hanging up my coat. She held out an envelope. It was plain white. The return address was stamped in red ink. Georgia State Penitentiary, inmate 8940. It is from him, she whispered. I took the envelope. It felt light. Do you want to read it? She asked. I looked at her. Do you? She shook her head vigorously. No, I don't care what he says. I don't care if he is sorry. I don't care if he found God. He is dead to me. She walked into the kitchen, rubbing her belly, protecting little Raymond from the bad energy. I stood alone in the hallway. I looked at the envelope. I recognized the handwriting. It was jagged and desperate. I walked into the living room. I had rebuilt the fireplace mantel using stones from the creek. It was solid. It was grounding. A fire was crackling in the grate, chasing away the evening chill. I sat down in my armchair. I tore open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined yellow paper. Ray, the letter began. Please, you have to help me. It is cold in here. They put me in the block you told me about. There is no sun. The guards, they know who I am. They know I was rich. They treat me like an animal. I read on. I am sorry about Clara. I swear. I did not mean for it to go that far. I just wanted to speed things up. I was in debt. The cartel was going to kill me. I had no choice. You have to understand, Ray. I did it for survival. I shook my head. He still did not take responsibility. Even in prison, he was the victim. He had no choice. He did it for survival. I read the last paragraph. Nia won't answer my letters. Please, Ray, talk to her, tell her I love her, and tell the lawyer to appeal. I cannot die in here. I am a Sterling. I am meant for better things. Please, just one more chance. I lowered the letter. One more chance. He had 1,000 chances. He had a chance when he married my daughter. He had a chance when I welcomed him into my home. He had a chance when Clara got sick. He had a chance when he stole the deed. He used every chance to dig his own grave. I looked at the fire. The flames were dancing orange and blue. I did not feel anger anymore. I did not feel hate. I felt nothing. He was a stranger. A bad memory fading in the rearview mirror. I did not crumple the letter. That would be emotional. I simply leaned forward. I tossed the paper into the fire. It landed on a burning log. For a second, nothing happened. The words, "I am a Sterling," sat there, black ink on yellow paper. Then the paper curled. It turned brown, then black. Whoosh! It caught fire. I watched the flames consume his pleas. I watched the fire eat his excuses. I watched the smoke rise up the chimney, carrying his desperation out into the night air where it would disperse and vanish. Nia walked in holding a plate of cornbread. "What are you doing, Dad?" she asked. I picked up the poker and stirred the ashes, making sure there was nothing left but gray dust. "Just cleaning up the last of the trash, baby girl," I said. I put the poker down. I stood up. I smelled the cornbread. It smelled like home. "Is that Mom recipe?" I asked. Nia smiled. "It sure is. Extra butter. Just how you like it." I put my arm around her. "Let us eat," I said. We walked into the kitchen, leaving the fire to burn down to embers. The house was warm, the foundation was solid, and the spring was just beginning. The sun was beginning to set over Atlanta, casting long shadows across the lawn that stretched out like fingers of gold and violet. I sat in my rocking chair on the front porch. It was the same chair I had been sitting in the morning the sheriff came. It was the same porch where Nia had thrown the black plastic bag at my chest. It was the same view of the street where I had walked away homeless and broken just a year ago. But everything looked different now. The grass was green and thick, no longer trampled by the boots of movers or the tires of construction trucks. The azaleas were blooming a riot of pink and white. The house behind me was silent, but it was a good silence. It was the silence of a structure that was at peace. The cracks were gone. The foundation was solid. The poison was washed away. I looked down at my hands resting on the armrests of the chair. They were large hands. The knuckles were swollen from years of gripping hammers. The skin was rough like sandpaper crossed with 1,000 tiny white scars. There was a permanent stain of oil under my fingernails and a callus on my thumb that felt like leather. Gavin used to look at these hands with disgust. He used to offer me hand sanitizer every time we shook hands, as if my hard work was a disease he could catch. He had soft hands. Hands that had never lifted anything heavier than a champagne glass or a pen to sign a fraudulent check. He thought his hands were clean, but they were the filthiest hands I had ever known. I rubbed my thumb over the wood of the chair. It is funny how the world defines value. To a man like Gavin, value was a number on a spreadsheet. It was the price per square foot. It was the brand on a car or the label on a suit. He looked at this house and saw a pile of old lumber that needed to be bulldozed to make way for glass and steel. He looked at my wife, Clara, and saw an obstacle to an inheritance. He looked at his own wife, my Nia, and saw a tool to be used, a signature to be forged, a scapegoat to be blamed. He looked at me and saw trash. He treated us like garbage. He tried to throw us away. But that was his mistake. He did not understand the nature of trash. I looked at the driveway where the Ferrari used to be parked. One man trash is another man treasure. Nia had gathered up the money he stole, the money he treated like a plaything, and she turned it into a weapon. I had gathered up the dignity he tried to strip from me and turned it into a shield. We took the wreckage he left behind and we built a fortress. He threw us away, but we recycled ourselves into something stronger. The screen door creaked open. I did not turn around. I knew the rhythm of those footsteps. Nia walked out onto the porch. She was holding baby Raymond in her arms. He was asleep, wrapped in a blanket I had knitted myself. She sat down in the chair next to me. "He is finally asleep," she whispered. "He fights sleep just like you do. He thinks if he closes his eyes he might miss something." I smiled. He just wants to make sure the work gets done. We sat there for a long time watching the sun dip below the horizon. The streetlights flickered on, buzzing to life one by one. "It is peaceful tonight," Nia said. "It is." I agreed. She looked at me. "Do you think about him, Dad?" I looked at the empty street. I thought about Gavin sitting in his cell. I thought about the cold concrete walls I had built. I thought about the darkness of solitary confinement. "No," I said. "I do not think about him. I think about the lesson he taught me." What lesson, Nia asked. I looked at my hands again. He taught me that you cannot build a life on a cracked foundation, I said. He built a tower of lies, Nia. It looked tall, it looked shiny, but the ground underneath was rotten. He thought he could buy respect, he thought he could steal love, but gravity always wins. I stood up, my knees popped, but it was a good sound, the sound of a machine that was still running. Hold the baby for a second, I said. I walked over to the workbench I had set up in the corner of the porch. Lying there was a piece of wood. It was a slab of solid oak reclaimed from the original floor joists of the house. I had spent the last week carving it. I had sanded it until it felt like silk. I had varnished it until it glowed like honey. I picked it up. It was heavy. I walked to the front door. I picked up my drill. "What are you doing?" Nia asked, standing up and rocking the baby. "I am finishing the renovation," I said. I held the sign up against the siding right next to the front door. I leveled it with my eye. I did not need a spirit level. My eye was true. Zzzt, zzzt. The screws bit into the wood. The sign was fixed. It was not going anywhere. I stepped back. "Read it." "Nia," I said. Nia walked closer. She adjusted the blanket around little Raymond. She read the words carved deep into the oak painted in gold leaf. Bishop and daughter. Builders. Established 1970. She gasped. Her hand went to her mouth. "Dad," she whispered. I put my arm around her. "You earned it," I said. "You are not just the girl who lives here, Nia. You are the partner. You helped me save this house. You helped me save our name." I looked at the baby sleeping in her arms. "And one day," I said, touching the baby cheek, "we will add and grandson to the bottom." Nia leaned her head on my shoulder. I felt her tears wet my shirt, but they were happy tears. We stood there looking at the sign. The house behind us was strong. The family inside it was safe. Gavin Sterling was gone. He was a bad dream that had ended when the morning came. I looked out at the street one last time. I was not rich. I did not have a Ferrari. I did not have a penthouse. But I had this. I had the wood under my feet. I had the daughter by my side. I had the grandson in her arms. And I had the peace of knowing that I had fought for what was mine and I had won. I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. It smelled of sawdust and jasmine. It smelled of victory. I turned off the porch light. "Come on inside, partner," I said to Nia. "Let us go home." We walked through the front door, and I closed it softly behind us, locking out the night and locking in the love. Moral of the story. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones holding the knife, and the ones who seem to hurt you are actually trying to cut you free. Gavin saw my house as a pile of wood to be sold, and my daughter as a tool to be used. He did not realize that you cannot tear down a foundation built on 40 years of sweat and blood. I learned that dignity is not about the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It is about knowing your worth when the world treats you like trash. Never underestimate an old man who knows how to build things. He also knows exactly how to take them apart. I hope this story reminded you that even when you are thrown away, you can always rebuild. If you enjoyed this journey with the Bishop family, please let me know in the comments which city you are watching from. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories about justice, resilience, and the power of family. See you in the next video. I spent 40 years learning that a house is only as strong as its foundation. Gavin built his life on the quicksand of greed and tried to paint over the cracks with money. He looked at my rough hands and saw a beggar, but he failed to see that these same hands held the blueprints to his destruction. True wealth is not what you steal, it is what you build and who you protect. When you treat people like trash, be careful, because sometimes that trash contains the match that burns your kingdom down to the ground. If you believe that justice always finds a way, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of redemption. Let me know in the comments, would you have forgiven him, or did he get exactly what he deserved?